Good evening, everyone. We'll call together the 15th regular meeting of the Board of Directors for the School Administrative District number 52. We'll start off with a Pledge of Allegiance led by me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are still in budget season, for a little while anyway, and we're going to start off with another budget work session, and particularly with a superintendent's update. Carrie.
We're getting close to the end of the slides. Okay, so I sent you guys some emails, but I'm going to say these things out loud for the benefit of the public and just to remind us all. So since our last meeting, we received our workmen's compensation rates, which were down. Yay, us. Thank you to operations, Gabby, special education, like places where our staff may be injured. So that was reduced by about 67,500. We did, at the last meeting, we eliminated the transportation uniforms, so we've taken out $1,100. The bad news, could have been worse, just gonna go with that. Our health insurance increase came in at 12.9%. Worst case scenario we calculated was 14, so it wasn't the worst case scenario. I will say that I surveyed area superintendents, and this was very, very consistent. Between 9 and 14 is what I heard from the whole region. One or two places came in at 3 or 4%. So that added $138,000. I am gonna recommend to you tonight, we have an unfilled science teacher at the high school. Gonna recommend eliminating that. I think I took the board's guidance of staying below 8% for an increase to the locals, and an additional reduction needs to happen to make sure we can do that. So that is what the recommendation is. And then overall, from the last time we were together on March 27th, the budget you have in front of you on the green sheets is $9,530 less than the last budget we brought in.
All right.
So that's where we are.
Any questions for the superintendent? Go ahead, Al.
How long has that position been vacant?
Yep. Evan, you're here, right? Do you want to talk about that?
Yep, it's been vacant since the end of last school year. It got posted late, and we didn't have a great deal of applicants, so rather than fill it, we waited until
Go ahead, Kristen.
It was just like an earth science. What kind of science were we hoping for?
it would have been a little bit of everything, to be honest. So it would have covered some earth science, some physical science, depending upon what their certification was when we hired them.
Okay. For science teachers at the high school level, earth science, physical science and life science are the two certification options, which I don't know if Evan agrees, it's very annoying that they can't just teach science. It's either life or physical. Physical science would be like,
Definitely split.
oh, right, you used to teach chemistry. All right, as a former high school principal who taught social studies, I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. But physical science would be chemistry, earth science, physics, life sciences, bio, that kind of stuff. So.
Yes, go ahead.
What has not having this position filled this year created as an undue hardship at the school?
We've been able to cover all of the sections that we would have needed to cover. It made them a little bigger, and made our study halls larger.
For next year, similar, you will have some classes that will be bigger than you would have wanted.
That's correct. There'll be some electives that we don't.
Can I have a follow-up?
Okay.
What are we saying when we say larger class sizes?
I would say
Roughly.
2 or 3 students spread out over several sections, so it gets it up, and depends on the course. So for example, we have biology sections that we're having to figure out how we're gonna do it, or how we're gonna split them, but they're gonna be big, like 24-ish.
Crystal?
That was what I was going to ask, because it is like one of the biggest classes that's come through Levitt. That was, so.
The
size
incoming
classes of
ninth
like-
graders, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ashley?
What electives aren't gonna be run?
There's a forestry elective that we're not gonna run. There's a couple of other ones, let me get it, I'll tell you. We're gonna run them, but we're not gonna run as many sections, so that the students will still get to sign up for it, but not all kids are gonna get it that requested it, so let me find my science page.
So while Evan's looking, as Evan and I have been talking, it's entirely possible that we'll need the position next year, given there's 189th graders, and I think the incoming 8th graders are 160, where Janet goes, 160. So it's entirely possible we need that position next year. This position, given that there's nobody in it, it's unfilled, it's a last minute, like, in terms of trying to make a decision around what made sense with last minute counting, this seemed to be a position that would cause the least amount of disruption to programs that we've got running now. We'll have to deal with what we may need next year.
I can answer that question now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, the forestry elective, we will not run. The second semester of Exploring River Valley, instead of running 3 sections, we'll run 2. A Foundations of Engineering class for 9th and 10th graders, instead of running 3, we'll run 2. Forensics class, instead of running 2 sections, we'll run 1.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Does that put forestry on like a biannual basis, or just gone?
If we get enough, if we get interested, we'll continue to have it in the program of studies. If we have interest and we have enough available sections of teachers, we'll run it.
How many sections were you planning to run?
Up to forestry, just 1.
Is it full year or half year?
It's a second semester elective.
So, okay.
Anyone else? I almost called on you, Gabby. You didn't.
Sorry. Nope.
No worries.
I'm good.
No worries.
Ashley?
Oh, Ashley, go ahead.
So you said you've had a hard time filling it. Do you think that'll continue? So if this were to be kept in, what's the likelihood you think it would be filled?
Well, it's a big difference to look for a science teacher now versus, what was it, July?
Summer.
It was in the middle of summer. Like, posting for it now, I think the chances are really good we'd find somebody.
I would have that.
Yeah. So the last year, it just was bad luck when the teacher left and when we posted it.
Go ahead. Yeah. Crystal. Oh.
I just want to say I don't like that, and I would love to see that removed from there and put back into the budget. Because if we have the opportunity to be able to capture those classes, I would really like to see that. It's super important.
Guess you might have a second.
I have a silly question.
Go right ahead.
And I should know the answer to this, and I don't know why I don't. What is the entire population of Turner Green and Leeds combined? Do we know?
The kids?
No.
Oh, the
Communities?
towns? Somebody have Google?
I was gonna
I'd have to
Google it, but I
Google
didn't wanna be
Okay,
rude.
Whatever.
Isn't it like
The
around
population
6 or
of
7 for
Leeds, and
Turner,
Green.
5 or 6 for
I think
Green?
there's
It's only
like
like
two-
2,000 or
two
so
in
for
Leeds.
2 or 3 leads.
4,000, I think, for-
Say around 15,000
Okay.
ballpark.
1,000.
Mind you, I'm grabbing like
So it's
this.
2020.
Yeah.
5,817 for Turner, 2,226 for Leeds, 5,086 for Green,
It's like
based on
14,000.
2020
Pretty good.
census.
Peter.
2020 census, well, you know what happened in 2020.
Okay.
Assuming
Well, how
everyone
could they
got
count
counted in
2020? They couldn't
2020,
come to our
right?
door.
I'm-
They're like,
No,
way
I
down.
mean, population increased quite a bit.
Oh.
I am wondering,
I'm trying
actually,
to
what
do
the next step in that.
I was trying to do the math and think like, is it worth an investment where you think it's like $4 per person to
Oh.
have these like science electives, right? Like, I sometimes think it's easier if it's broken down into like an individual taxpayer
But
mindset.
It's not even that way.
I understand, Gabby. Your math is mathing and mine is just, this is.
Emoting.
Yes.
So
There's emotional math and there's mapping math.
Yeah. I just think a teacher is worth an
Okey-dokey.
investment and I don't wanna see it.
Go ahead, Peter.
I agree with Crystal that I'm not overly comfortable with cutting an actual potential direct student educator. And I understand that probably the biggest flag on this one was the fact there's nobody in it. That's important, but sometimes I gotta look at the overall picture for the district. And I would wonder that, would there be a position that somebody's currently in that we take out and still have a direct one-on-one? My first things come to my mind are the educational coaches. We have currently 6 of them. If we reduced it by 1, and then maybe look at somewhere of a cut in somewhere else in the buildings or something like that to make up the difference. Because my concern, and I understand we're running into the whole thing, but I feel that we can make that work, by focusing on what we truly need to focus on, our math or English with those people. But still, this is a direct, this person we're talking about just doesn't happen to be in the position, but that position is a direct teacher, one-on-one teacher with the student body. And to me, sciences, it seems like we're shooting ourselves in the foot by getting rid of and reducing what our offerings are at the high school in that realm. I understand the importance of, and I just that was the first one in my mind. I don't really know. I guess my long story short here is, are there any other recommendations, or was this the only thing, was there any other, what was number 2 on your list if this was there? Did you have anything?
No.
So that you saw no other cuts that we could possibly make?
Well, no, that's a separate question. You asked me if there are any other recommendations, and I don't have a different recommendation, because some of those, we have positions
Oh,
with
I understand we
people in
can't
them,
talk
right?
about with
So-
somebody in it.
Right,
so,
right, right.
okay, yeah,
But I think 100% is it a consideration of mine, because this has been a conversation at this board, like, can we minimize the number of actually people that are gonna lose their job? And so that was a consideration versus a position that actually has a staff member in it. So that 100%. This position, and Evan, we've been talking about this position during the entire budget process. Like, is this something we can hold on to? Can we make this happen? Like, it's been on the list as a potential cut during the process. And I wouldn't be putting it up here if the health insurance had come in under 10%, right? I would feel comfortable, but I think enough concerns have been raised about the potential increase that it didn't feel responsible on my part to bring that full increase without any other reductions. And this one is the least disruptive because, one, it gives an opportunity for Eben and his team to build a schedule without the position. And so it's not like we've got kids in schedules and now they've got to undo the schedules and make them. And Eben, please, at any point. We're not disrupting anybody's life in terms of their job. And we're not adding anything new to the table this late in the budget conversation that nobody saw coming. Like, I think that's my worry, is that if we make a decision, and who knows, we may have to make some of that decision in May, like depending on this outcome. But for somebody to not have had any heads up at all that this potentially was gonna be a cut, and to just have that conversation this week, in my mind, seemed really late to the game to tell somebody that we've gotten this far, but now there's gonna be a recommendation that your job's not gonna be in the budget. So those were all my considerations.
So Bree, just 1 second here. You did a real good job of turning that into a question at the end, which is what we're doing right now, is asking questions of the superintendent. And I'm just highlighting that because we are gonna move on here towards a discussion on adoption of a budget, okay? So things like changing these recommendations or making motions to do those things, that's about what we're headed into. So Bree, before we move to that, I just wanna make sure, do you have questions for the superintendent, or do you have other things to talk about?
I can say that.
You can say it, okay. Yes, Alex?
Did you do the math, if you left this position in, what was the end result of the town? I mean, you know, that 8% was always like the pie in the sky.
So the total change overall would be 7.99%. To Green, it would be 7.33. Leeds, it would be 8.24, and Turner, it would be 8.36.
And that was with this removed?
If we put that position in.
So
What you
if-
have in
if this
front
was
of you,
left in.
what you have in
Yep.
front of you is that position out.
Yep.
And that's not because that's what's gonna happen, because Gabby is prepared, if we're gonna mess with the numbers, to like do that tonight. But I thought that we needed to have a starting place that was below 8% in every town, because that was very clear guidance from the board.
Can you just repeat those, Gabby?
Yep.
Sorry.
Green is 7.33. Leeds would be 8.24. Turner is 8.36, with an overall of 7.99. To the towns.
Okay, before we move on in the discussion, I thought I saw other hands. Yes, Anthony?
So I had asked for the percent changes for a couple of things, if they were, just very hypothetically, if they were not there.
Yep, so the total cost for Chromebooks, iPads for grades K through 3 is $85,920. If we reduce that, it would decrease the overall budget by 0.24%. And so I don't have it by town, it's just the overall.
Okay.
And the 7.47 is the one we're operating from right now, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it would go from, the theoretical budget you've got in front of you on green paper would go from 7.47 to 6.92% overall increase. The instructional coaches, the cost for salary and benefits is $534,000 and some change. That would be a decrease of 1.52%, and the overall increase would go from 7.47 to 4%
To the towns.
to the town. So if we combined all of that, then it goes from 7.47 to 3.44.
Other questions? All right. So next, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna entertain a motion for adoption of the recommended budget for fiscal year '26. Take a motion.
So moved.
So moved,
Second.
seconded by Kyle.
Was Peter the?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So now we are into discussion on that, okay? So, like we've been talking about, this is the time. If you did want to make a change, put an amendment on the floor, or start talking about adjustments here, go ahead, Bree.
So I'll go back to the conversation about the science teacher. Some of my concerns, seeing that on the board tonight, is, well, I realize that it is a vacant position, so it feels safe, because you're not cutting a human being out and saying you don't have a job anymore. Again, I agree with Peter that we need to look at the direct impact that that teacher, that position would have on students' learning. And part of me worries about next year trying to put that back into the budget, and we so very much need to have that science teacher. So I would agree with Crystal and second any motion to remove that from being eliminated. I believe that we have other areas in the budget that we can look at to reduce and still not have a high impact on student learning, a negative impact on student learning.
You said you were gonna second Crystal on that, but I don't know if you actually.
I
made a
can
mo-
make- yeah,
Okay, if you wanna make a motion and second
Not to
it,
put you out.
No, that's okay, I make a motion to
reinstate.
reinstate the LAHS science teacher. I second that.
Okay. So, I don't know if I gave you the best guidance there. I think what we should have probably done there is amend the motion to reinstate the science teacher, because we already have a motion on the floor to accept, so.
I
is that
amend.
amending the motion, seconded, okay, we're discussion on an amendment. Is that clear, Teresa?
Sorry. Yes.
Yes, go ahead,
Got it.
Jamie.
I support that amendment.
Okay. Go ahead.
I support keeping the high school science teacher, but with a plan for what else is gonna be looked at. Like, I wouldn't wanna vote to add it back in without a plan of how is it gonna be rectified on the other end.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Others, wait, Carrie, you wanted to go?
I think we're gonna struggle to then be directed to find $80,000 more and sort of like figure that out at the last minute without really being able to consult and plan for that. Like, I just want you to know that the process to go through this is sort of like very deliberate. And so I think, while I completely understand and don't disagree that I'd love to have the position in there, if we're gonna put it back in and then find $80,000 more, I wanna make sure that we don't end up like with a little bit of a chaotic process where we don't have a thoughtful way in which we're removing $80,000 somewhere else, right? So I think that's gonna be my concern.
I'll follow on that, which is that I actually support bringing that position back as well, but I don't know where else we're gonna find cuts to bring it back down. And so, my own personal feeling is, I don't mind the budget increasing in order to cover that position, personally. But I have a lot of concern about our budget creeping back up above that 8% and it getting approved. So, I could say I'm much more apt to go along with the recommendations from our superintendent rather than try to add this position back in and try to find some other types of cuts to bring this back down. Bree?
Would you like my list now?
Well, if you have
Of things I
thoughts,
would recommend cutting in place of the science teacher.
go ahead and put it out there.
Okay. As I had mentioned, I do feel that there are other things within our facilities line and the facilities warrant that we could look at, deferring for a year, where it won't have an undue hardship on students' learning and the overall functioning of the school day. So for example, if we could delay the water bottle filling stations, that's about $25,000 for all of them. It's not an undue hardship. They have water bottle filling stations at all of the schools. This is adding in an additional, which would bring them to, as I believe Dave had said, to what they wanted to have for like capacity for each of the school buildings. But I think that's something that our students would be okay with, the water bottle filling stations that they currently have. And we could look at that, adding that back onto the budget for next year. Do you want me to be more specific with where that line is on the warrant article?
I don't know, I think,
I have others, so I just want to know how.
if you want
focus.
to,
Say them all?
so I would say that, I think putting it out there to give us a kind of a preview of where discussion could go, but
Okay,
you don't
great.
necessarily need to get into them all in great detail right now.
Either deferring or doing like a phased, I'm not entirely sure, like, I haven't been in the space, so I don't know what it would look like to do half or just say no this year, but deferring as well on the locker replacements, that's coming in at $10,000. I want to bring us back to the conversation that Peter spent a lot of time talking about at another board meeting about the music room carpet replacement, and I do really strongly think that we should have more conversation around that before just completely replacing the carpet with more carpet, that in like 10 years, we're gonna wanna be replacing again, because they're elementary kids and it gets dirty and ripped and stained, and consider maybe replacing that with the tile that would have a longer lifetime, but deferring that, postponing that, so we could have more conversation and look into that, as there are several other music rooms in this district that have tiles, so I understand the whole sound barrier, but if that could give us more time to have a discussion before we jump into that. I believe that was also $5,000 for that replacement. And another suggestion for reducing in other areas that do not affect teachers specifically is a phased purchase of the fire retardant shades here at TMS. I believe that all of them, the request was, at this time was for $10,000. Could we look at doing half and coming out with just $5,000? or we could say all of them and put 10,000 on the budget for next year. So those are my 4: water bottle filling stations, the locker rooms at the high school, the music room,
What was the total
TES?
value?
45,000.
Okay.
It's not all, but it was a start.
Yeah.
And again, I agree with you that I'm okay with our total percentage needs to increase, but how can we maybe not increase it so much? So those were 4 suggestions.
50 to 50.
Well, I had down 25, 10, 5, and 5.
No, you said 10 for the
5 to 10.
Well, if you want, like, my original suggest was to do a phase, like do only half of it this year and half next year, which would be 5 this year and 5 next year, but
Okay.
if
I
anyone
think,
wants to do
I
all
think
of
this-
it, it would be
I
10.
think we're good on that. We can come back to that idea if we want to put that back on the floor to talk
I
about.
was just clarifying the numbers.
Understood. But right now, what we're talking about is an amendment to reinstate the science teacher's position. Is there anyone else that has more discussion around that? Anthony?
I support the idea of keeping the teacher in. I'm more in Peter's camp in that I support the reduction in the overall budget that the superintendent has come up with that proposal. And I do think that there are ways that we could find a way to pay for that. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Sure. Here.
I would very much support putting it back in. It, again, really concerns me, one of our core STEM classes not being taught. But again, I would like to find us some way, and I emphasize again, I'm just curious, if there's no other avenues, suggestions that was been addressed by the administration, then we as a board will start having to look at cutting, and I don't want us to, I just hate to see us start cutting where administration has felt that they've, we're gonna go in with a little bit of not this same tooth blade that you might, so that's why I emphasize again, because there had to be some thought that this might be put back in and we'd wanna make cuts, so was there anything out there at all would be what before we start making suggestions that the district as a whole is more comfortable with? Otherwise, we can start looking and we can start cutting.
So, my next suggestion, and you've put facilities on the plate, I think there's a couple of things that I just want to clarify. I couldn't find 5 water bottle stations, so I think there's $15,000 of that. Two of those are to deal with the lead in the water. Like, we really don't have a choice. Like, there's no drinking fountain in the B wing of TES, and that's a drinking fountain that's been shut down because there's lead. There's a similar one at, I want to say TPS, and then the upstairs in 2 of the schools where we're putting that in, we're paying for a water bubbler right now. So, like, I'm not sure. However, the point is, if you want us to find $80,000 in cuts in facilities, then we can do that. I think I'm not sure picking particular things is gonna be the most productive way to do it, just because, for example, the lockers, we have 52 working lockers, we anticipate 100 kids needing them in the fall, right? So we just have a lot of kids who are doing stuff and we don't have enough. So, but that doesn't mean that Gabby and I can't work with Dave to find $80,000 worth of cuts. That are things that we think we can put off and not do. So if that is something that the board would rather do, is to identify like an amount from a warrant article, then we would find that amount. I think 80,000 from facilities, we would work to reduce that. I have great concerns with all the conversations we've had about professional development and the loss of funds and not being able to provide it. I think we run a serious risk of not being able to implement the things that we want to implement and provide the support to teachers that we know they need to be able to do it in a manner that actually benefits kids. I have great concerns about that.
Just for what it's worth, I think we're in this position where we are with the budget because this exercise against facilities has probably been done many years over.
Yeah.
I wouldn't support taking anything out of the budget for facilities. I think that it was probably under-supported to begin with. And, I'll leave it at that. But I think that kicking cans further down the road just creates bigger increases in the future. no matter how you look at it. That's all it is.
I guess I'm gonna add to what I said a few minutes ago, which is that, I very much support bringing this teacher back, but I'm probably gonna vote against this amendment because, we've heard about some facilities ideas. I happen to agree with Alex. I think on facilities, we, are in a hole because of deferred maintenance. And these things that we're talking about deferring are just parts of a project that are, has been ongoing. I think it's important we continue along that path. And the other thing that I feel like has been hinted towards, but not necessarily put on the table in a big way yet, is our instructional coaches. And I'm not, particularly with everything we're doing around curriculum right now, the need for continuing education and support for our teachers. I'm very hesitant to want to start withdrawing our teaching coaches. So I'm probably gonna vote against this amendment because I don't know where else we would find cuts, and I think we need to stay largely where the budget has been recommended.
So one last option is to increase the carryover, to add $80,000 in carryover from the fund balance to offset.
My only concern with that is that you're going to hit a cliff. If we then do not continue to carry forward that same amount, that is an automatic increase the next year.
But it is another option, I'm just putting them out there.
Yeah, but it's largely pushing it to next year, like you just said, Kevin. Yeah.
Unless we continue to increase that 555,000 by 80,000 every single year.
Yeah.
How many districts have a carryover balance? What's the average carryover balance for a district?
That was a conversation that did come up amongst business managers, and they vary. For instance, Lewiston, I believe, used $6 million of carryover last year to offset their budget, but that left them
With nothing.
with nothing. So if there is an issue, for instance, the state budget not passing, then they're not going to be able to function. Another district is at 11.2% in carryover. Another one stays at the 9% always, no matter what it is.
What's the average increase in the carryover year over year for the budget?
For our,
Yeah, so what's the average increase added to that at the end of the year?
I don't know what the average increase is, I'm sorry.
To carry over, it's the same number, what do you mean?
You're saying unallocated fund balance, what our average increase is? Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't know.
Alex?
Just a clarifying question about what Anthony had brought up. The Chromebooks, K-3, $85,000. Those were new Chromebooks to be purchased, or is it a yearly type?
So
thing?
we
Is that-
purchase new devices at kindergarten, grade 3, middle school, high school, making sure I got that right. And the kids keep it, right? So but we constantly have to refresh that. If you remember, we've reduced the amount we're spending already in that amount. We're not gonna buy as many iPads. And to be honest with you, we're increasingly concerned that the money we have is not gonna pay for all of them anyway. Like the cost of those Chromebooks are just gonna go up. So reducing that amount just means we're not gonna be able to buy any of them as much as we really need anyway.
So this isn't replacing Chromebooks we already have. This is new Chromebooks for new kids.
Nope, so it is a regular budget line every year.
Okay.
So the kindergarten kids, new iPads, they keep them
Right.
until 3rd grade. And then in 3rd grade, they get those Chromebooks and they keep those until they go to the middle school. And then between the high school and the middle school, they get replaced. One set of that is paid by the state and one set of that is paid by us. So this year, the high school, we're paying zero money for Chromebooks because we're using the state money. Last year, we used the state money to purchase the middle school, I'm pretty sure. So between the high school and middle school, that pot of money moves between the high school and middle school, so it offsets what we need for that group.
Any further discussion around the amendment that's on the floor? Now remember, there's an amendment to approving the recommended budget. The amendment is to reinstate the science teacher at the high school. Before we move to vote on that, does anyone have anything further they want to add? Okay, seeing none. Let's So we're going to take a vote here. Again, if you vote for the amendment, you are reinstating the position. If you vote against it, you are maintaining the recommendation of administration. So all those in favor of the amendment? That's 3. All those opposed? 6. That motion, the amendment does not pass. So we are back to the motion on the floor, which is a motion to approve the budget recommended by administration. Is any further discussion around that? Okay, Peter.
Probably isn't an issue unless I missed an email this afternoon. Answer the email I sent you in regards to the Department of Ag cutting. Have we seen an effect by that yet?
So I was gonna provide that an update.
I just was curious if that's affecting our budget at all, at this point.
So, one, I'm struggling to keep up, so I'm just gonna say that honestly. The 3 things that I know, the 4 things that I know.
Well, hold on, it's getting more, so if we wait, we've got more.
Oh, I know, well, and if you'd asked me yesterday, it would have been a different number, so the things that I know have directly impacted us, right, is the reduction in title, which one did we know already?
5.
Title 5.
And 2.
And 2, we know we've gotten a reduction there.
So that's a new one, because we only had 1 reduction there to be last time we met.
Title, is it okay if I speak?
Yes, please. Please, Peter.
Title 2, we have a 5-year reduction of $3,500. That is,
That's not new information. We
that's,
Yeah,
did know
that's
that
that's
a while
not,
ago,
and
yeah.
then last time that we gave information, Title 5 has been reduced by 47%.
So we don't
from
know
what
about
we
the rest of the
got this
titles
year.
yet. We won't know that until.
Typically, it's mid-April, but I'm not sure.
So 2 funding sources that don't come to us, but our teachers have benefited from. One is the bar training that the high school and the middle school have been getting. The 3rd year, the funding got cut off like immediately a week ago. The Bar Institute is saying they're gonna continue to provide training on their own dime, so we'll see how that works. Another regular training that our teachers are accessing, especially elementary, is the regulated classroom. That was federal funded, so that has also been cut. And then, what's the last one? There was a $5,000 elimination from the USDA to support food service purchasing locally grown produce. It's $5,000. Dave feels like he can absorb that in the budget, so we're not concerned, but that is so those are the 4 things that I know for a fact have impacted us. Beyond that, I don't know. Everything else is, I heard yesterday the DOE provided an update to regional superintendents about a notice they got about a funding cut, but they're still trying to sort out like what that means, right? So I may get a notice tomorrow saying, oh, we figured it out and we're gonna take this money from you. I have no idea.
Does the lunch program money filter through the state?
Yes,
So that's kind of where that's kind of getting lost. You hear about it being cut and shut.
correct.
So at this
Correct.
point, we're hoping that the state's gonna fill the gap.
So it's state money and federal money.
Yeah.
That's the combo that does that. So
But we don't get it directly, so we get it via the,
Dave submits he submits it, and then I don't know how that formula works between the state and the federal government, to be honest with you, like how much of it. I know some of it is state funding because we're offering free lunch for every student. That's not what happens in every state.
Yep.
I think there's 15 states now who do that. So some of it's federal, some of it's state. I do know they are working on updating how we are counting the number of students who are eligible, because by updating that counting, it allows the state to contribute a little bit less and access more federal funds. But again, that assumes federal funds are still there, so, but as of right now, I have not heard they are not. I don't know.
if you want to get confused, just keep reading the newspaper articles like I do, because what made me think of it was the newspaper article that Bangor was losing $1 million plus.
Yes, and I don't know what they're, I don't know
I'm
what
curious
that,
what, if all of a sudden they were figuring out something, it's just like, oh, well,
they know more than Kendra Macon does. When she did me an update yesterday with the superintendents, she couldn't tell us the number, so I really don't know. But those 4 things, those things I actually know.
thank you.
All right.
Oh.
Did you use something?
I can answer Ashley's question just from how it
Okay.
went up from fiscal year '23 to '24. It was a 15% increase. I can't go back further at this point without more documents and time.
What's that amount to? Vic?
974,000.
And of that, you get 500,000 to roll forward.
550.
555.
550. So if numbers are the same, you'd be expecting about the same this year.
Potentially,
So taking 80,000 out of it wouldn't really impact it.
potentially.
I see what you're doing, like if that increase, like if what we carry over sort of
Stays
grows.
consistent, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a percentage versus a hard number.
Yep.
Yep. So we could still do this and add to the carryover to reduce it even more if that was the choice. This is what that theory is, I think I understand.
What would the risk be of a low, if the budget, blow out all the warrants out of the water? And
I
that,
don't understand, I'm sorry.
if that percentage goes down this year, what would cause that?
The carryover percentage goes down, you're
Right.
saying? Well, what would cause that is.
No, the remaining unallocated balance at the end of the year, what would cause that to decrease?
Moving more money forward, carrying forward more than, so the unallocated fund balance increases based on what isn't spent in this current year's budget.
Right.
So if we move more forward and we also allocate more to reserve accounts for other projects that we foresee coming, and then it's not underspent as much as it was the previous year, that is going to reduce the unallocated fund balance. There is a bill on the table to keep that 9% level for allowable unallocated fund balance, but if that bill doesn't pass, it has to go down to 5%, so we would have to reduce our unallocated fund balance anyway.
But that unallocated balance could be reduced if we go over budget for the year. Or have
We
Correct,
can't.
so this year, we anticipate being over budget in special ed, so there will be less at the end of the year. Is
But
that what
we
you're
have
saying?
frozen the budget so
Yeah,
that,
well, we'll see if we can freeze it enough so it doesn't do that, but we might.
Overall, would you say the risk is relatively lower, that's gonna be brought down below 100,000?
no, I don't think it's gonna be brought down below.
Okay.
But I haven't done a projection lately, I haven't had time to. There have been more pressing issues.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I have to question the wisdom of putting expensive devices that need to be replaced with some regularity in the hands of very young students. Particularly given that these are exactly the kinds of devices that I think undermine the development of long-term attention spans. iPads, Chromebooks, these things connect the world to your kid instead of the other way around. I think that's an important thing for people to remember. And they are devices that are very expensive, that have very short lifespans. I have not seen anything convincing about their use at such low grade levels. And I understand that we have developed some assessments that rely on them, but I don't like having my hands tied by, well, you know, we've made this decision to do this, so we're just gonna continue to throw good money after bad. So I would propose that we cut that from the budget.
That being,
The Chromebooks and iPads for those lower grade levels that I asked for that amount for.
what was the grade level? That's kind of.
That was-
You said K to 3?
K to 3.
So it was iPads and Chromebooks, so that means, because we purchased Chromebooks in 3rd grade, that means there would be no Chromebooks through 6th grade, because we don't pit.
Exactly.
So it'd be
because
all the elementary schools would have no technology.
I don't think those devices are necessary, and I don't think that those student minds are mature enough at least until middle school for them to be resilient enough to resist the erosive nature of those devices.
Is this,
Second.
I was gonna say, are you making an amendment?
I am, yes.
And a second.
I second it.
Okay.
Mostly for,
Yeah, I just wanna make sure I understand 100%. So this is a move to remove Chromebooks and iPads from the elementary schools. Is that,
well, that's where I want to get clarification.
well,
I've
that's why.
seconded the motion so we can discuss it some more.
Okay, but what is that's why I'm asking it again for clarity.
Well, I mean, the motion is limited to the budget. I'm not voting on anything except the budget right now, because that's the business of the board at
Okay.
hand. So I would love to see them removed from the schools at that level, but I am saying that budget line, and we can find whatever line it is, be taken off.
Okay,
It's across schools, so,
Yes.
so it's an amount across.
okay,
The amount is $85,920.
Thank you.
okay. Seconded by Peter. So we're in a discussion about that right now, and I just want to get clarity. Again, we're cutting those line items. What in effect does, though, is removes the devices from the elementary school.
There are old devices now that would remain, we would not be, so we
Okay.
would be functioning with the old ones until they die.
Okay. Bree?
If it's not too much of a hardship for you to find out, but I think you can figure it out, can we find out what's the cost just for iPads, not the Chromebooks for that? Because you said this iPads is what they get in kindergarten, but Chromebooks is what they get in third grade, so I'd like to have that
So we reduce-
85,000 number
we
split,
reduce
please.
that.
It's just a cost, it's leads, green, and
TPS,
TPS, correct? Okay.
While you're working on that, Jamie, I don't know if you would like to go.
Can I ask your permission to ask the elementary educators we have present for their opinion on this line item?
I'd start with Carrie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't, I feel like making a budget decision of this magnitude without discussing it or having the educators even have a heads up for discussion on something of this magnitude is a concern of mine.
I think if the board wants to have a conversation about technology use in schools, we should have that conversation. But to do this now without having the broader conversation, I think does sort of impose a chaotic decision that would require us to undo a lot of decisions we've already made. And not saying, I appreciate your comment about being handcuffed by decisions we've made, but if the board wants to have those conversations so that we are looking at different decisions, so that it can be done in a way that's thoughtful, that teachers understand how to do, and there may be implications for the budget in other ways. Paper would be one of those, right? So there's other implications that I can't tell you what that looks like if we do this. So I think I feel like there's potentially some interest in having that conversation. To do it this way, I think risks a lot of chaos for teachers to figure out.
Gabby, how you doing?
One more minute.
Okay, go ahead, Bree. Oh,
So-
sorry, actually, Peter is up next.
You bring it over.
Okay.
So, just playing a scenario here, if we were to not purchase these Chromes and iPads, would they be able to take the computers from the sixth graders to recycle them back to the third graders? Or are we saying that those are past their lifetime and wouldn't work well?
You know what,
Like
Wally's
vice
not in the
versa.
room.
And same thing for, I
Wally's
know.
not in the room.
Same thing for
somebody-
the iPads, taking them from the second graders and recycling them back.
I think,
I'm not gonna, I think what Anthony's saying, the question or the proposal right now is about budget and not about whether or not we think technology should be in the hands of kids at the young age. He brought that up, but that's a separate conversation, right? Right now, it's just about the budget and the money, and so I wanted to know, would we be able to recycle what we currently have?
so they don't come to the middle school with their Chromebooks from the elementaries, correct? Correct. Right, so they would, all those devices would stay in the elementary
Correct.
school.
But would we take the sixth graders and pass it to the third graders that are coming up? Because they get rid of their iPad in second grade, they move onto a Chromebook. So those exiting sixth graders, the Chromebooks that they had been using since third grade, what's the life, and I know, again, you probably can't answer this because that's a Wally question, right? Could those get recycled and given back to
I mean,
the,
they will have to be.
And there are limitations, right?
Abs-
Technology
so-
I
limitations
understand.
as
Right.
it goes.
I mean,
But like, that's
that-
what we would do if we did not purchase new Chromebooks.
We
and
would be
iPads.
using what we have, yeah. I don't know, I couldn't tell you how they get, who's gonna have what, but we'll just take what we've got and use them.
$25,920.
Okay.
Can you say that again, please? You go so fast.
$25,920.
And just-
25,000.
Just a reminder, but that was a separating the iPads from the Chromebooks?
That is
Correct.
only the
That
iPads
is
at
only-
kindergarten level.
Okay.
K1,
That's,
2.
that's how much the iPads cost, is 25,000.
That's how much is in our budget, which is half of what Wally originally proposed.
So we already cut that in half.
Yep.
Just
Yes,
a reminder,
yes,
right?
yes,
So
yes,
we've
yes,
already
yes.
reduced that.
Okay, so the iPads alone are 25,000.
920,
Peter?
just making sure.
I know that this subject has, it's been floating on the outside for about a month or so now, so it really isn't much of a surprise to a lot of us to be coming forward, because I know we've seen numerous emails and discussions got me thinking about it. I very much feel that we're not talking about getting rid of technology in the elementary school. That's not what's being
Okay.
said or talked about, or even the desire, well, to any extent. I somewhat agree, and I would look, and my concern, the K1, 2, I can definitely see not necessarily needing it. So that is where my question lays. I had some concern, we said, if we cut this out, we're not gonna have technology in the elementary school, and I just didn't see that, because they're not taking it, as Bree said, they're not taking it to the middle school. So we can, those sixth grade ones can be moved back in and rotated in, and, okay, if we're running low on systems for this year, because it seems like we are, okay, maybe the new kindergartners who haven't been used to it don't get one. And that might be the avenue to go, just the kindergartners themselves. And then that gives us 100 books free. But I guess I do see a benefit to not having technology so early in their hands. So I guess I'm somewhat in favor of, I guess I don't know, what is the line, what did I second?
Cutting
I'm just
them out
curious,
entirely.
but so we cut out
The new ones.
both new ones, which would basically, the 85,000 is what it was. And that would be all replacements for K to 6.
No, it replaces in kindergarten and 3rd grade.
So only those two.
That's all we ever do. We don't
Okay,
replace
and then
6th
migrate it
grade.
up, okay,
Correct.
so,
Keep
yeah.
with them,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 And Kyle, you had your hand up, so I don't know if you wanna go now.
It's fine if you want to go.
No, I was just gonna ask a question, which was, we cut technology's initial budget request, right?
Yes,
And so we're buying fewer devices
Correct.
already.
correct.
In half, is what, in both of those line items? as
Not
well?
in the Chromebooks, just the
Not in the
iPads.
Chromebooks, just the iPads.
Just the iPads, I think, yeah.
I think you might be right.
I
Okay,
feel like it was just iPads.
okay.
You mentioned government funding also,
Correct.
is it just the Chromebooks or is it both the iPads
It,
and?
the issue around the cost for the iPads and the Chromebooks is tariffs. Like the increase, because most of these devices are not made in the United States, so the cost for them is likely gonna go up. So we won't likely be able to buy all the ones we need anyway.
Just not from China.
So what is it, but we're getting money from the state towards, to.
For one set, for the set that's coming for 9th graders, that one is coming from state funding.
Okay.
And
so-
they've already sent us an email saying, yeah, we're not sure what we're gonna, like, they've already sent us an email warning about the cost.
And is that based off of how many we're purchasing? So if you wanted, whatever the student body is, they said we'll fund that. So
So
it's not a
so
percentage
what
of
Wally
all
does
purchases.
is he looks at the biggest group of kids, and the biggest group of kids are the incoming 9th graders. So that's the group that we seek the funding from the state, and then he budgets for the smaller group. That's the 6th graders or something like that, right? Yeah.
So there's no ties with a direct correlation of, it's just they'll fund a certain
Yeah,
student
you
body.
buy
It's not a
into
percentage of-
MLTI as like what grade?
Okay.
And so Wally just says, we wanna use our MLTI allocation at 9th grade, and I sign a paper saying that's what we're gonna do.
And I
So-
believe that there's a limit as to how much you can spend per student as well.
Yeah, so I think they give you what the device is gonna
Right.
be and all that, and
Right.
you just say, fine, I'll take that
Yeah,
device.
so my point was, I guess it was just that if we're doing cuts, does that affect it, like certain other, other budgets that we work on, like if we're taking a cut and the funding shrinks?
No,
No.
oh, no, I see what you're saying, no, they don't expect us to.
There's no match.
To spend some money, correct, I understand what you're
Okay.
saying, no, no.
Yeah, that would be my concern, is if we start doing this and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, sorry, you're
Yeah.
only gonna give you
No,
10%
no,
less.
no, it does not work that way,
Okay.
now I understand, yeah.
Anyone else? Remember the motion on the floor, actually, I think it would be great to repeat the amendment that's on the floor right now, if we could.
I can. A motion was made by Anthony Shostak, seconded by Peter Ricker, to cut the iPads and Chromebooks from the budget, $85,920.
So I think it should say kindergarten and 3rd grade, that's what you meant, right? Not all of, because that's.
That's
all the
more than
iPads and all the
85,000.
Chromebooks. Kindergarten and 3rd grade.
Well, no, only if we're purchasing for kindergarten and 3rd grade. But I've got it in here now.
Yeah.
You meant kindergarten and 3rd grade,
Yes.
because that's the
That's-
question you
that's the-
asked me.
Those-
That is
That's
correct.
Yes,
the
yes.
only ones that are in the budget, correct?
No,
No,
there's
she-
Chromebooks for the middle school,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
yeah.
You didn't just hear Wally fall down? You heard him on the machine there. He
Yeah.
just went, "What?"
All right,
Probably getting text messages now.
I guess, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted, like, you mentioned Wally falling down, it made me think of Wally. We gave Carrie as a board a very clear instruction, which was, hey, we need to keep this budget under 8%. And that's what Carrie brought to us today, after weeks and weeks and weeks of having Wally here and all of the people in the district here to defend what they needed. And I think, at the stroke of midnight isn't the time when we should be making a cut like this without having Wally here to tell us why this is important, how long the life of these lasts. I'm just very, very nervous to make big decisions like this when they aren't here to talk about it. And they aren't here to explain to us exactly why this budget is what it is and why these devices are needed. And same thing with anything else.
I will just say, all these devices are in warrant article 1. It was they're not in the technology budget, they're in warrant article 1. It was the very first warrant article that we did. It's the only technology that's in warrant article 1 is these devices.
I think you were next, Anthony.
So with all respect to Jamie, what we're doing at this meeting is talking about approving the budget and making changes to it. And if the attitude is that we can't introduce things at this point because our opportunity to do so was at previous meetings, then what you're saying is that there should be no discussion and there should be no amendments
I just
to
said
this
Jamie,
budget.
word of caution.
Jamie,
So, I want to remind us that each director has the authority to introduce amendments. And I think the idea that to do so at this point is somehow chaotic or irresponsible, it does not sit well landing over here. It really doesn't.
who's next? Bree?
I just wanted to clarify what my question previously, because I feel like the intention of my question might be misinterpreted. When I was asking about that the students would then have to recycle the computers, I'm not a proponent of that option. So I just wanted to make that clear, that that's what would be the likelihood if we cut this from the budget, is that students would be recycling these laptops. Again, without Wally here, I don't know if that is a good move or not going to, like if that would be detrimental to student learning and their education if they're trying to use laptops that are missing a bunch of keys, that aren't able to, that go through a lot of buffering when the students are on there because the programs are, the laptops have lived their life and they're really slow. And that's really, it would be a hardship for the students in their education, their learning. So I'm leaving that out there, but I just wanted to clarify that I asked the question simply to get information, not to specifically say that I was for it or against it, but I just wanted to clarify that that's what would be the outcome if we cut these laptops would be recycled.
Yes, Peter?
Just have a question.
Oh,
Question
yeah.
for Carrie. So by doing this wouldn't eliminate or decrease how much screen time kids are having in the classroom. It would just lower quality technology, potentially.
Based on making the decision now, without without having made some decisions all along the way throughout the year, I can only presume that's the case, right? If we're gonna be looking a year from now to wanting to do that, then we have a year to make different decisions that would reduce screen time. So but right now, I can't tell you would be any different.
So, okay, Peter, go ahead.
I want to clarify a little bit with what Anthony was saying. This is the final budget meeting unless it doesn't pass. So I don't want to feel that, okay, we can't make any decisions at it. That's not how we should operate. If we feel that we need to make a cut because of something that happened this week, yeah, we probably all would have been fine with this if nothing changed. And it came with how our last meeting was. But we knew that wasn't the case. So coming to this meeting thinking, oh, we can't make a change then, that's not how we should operate. And administration knows that as well, so it needs to be understood on their end, and I believe they do, that, yeah, they have to try to figure out where we're going to look to try to make these cuts, and I don't think we should be held hostage because the information is not readily available. Then we need to find it, we need to make the decision. I have concern, maybe Wally should have been here. Maybe, this is the last budget meeting. And we're talking about a lot of areas that we're supposed to be cutting, and I don't see the people in charge of those areas here. And that bothers me, because this is important, and if we have questions, whether it be about transportation, whether it be about a variety of issues, I don't feel I can ask them, and what we're getting for an answer is, well, the person who's not here can't explain it, so we can't cut it. And I don't think that's how we should operate, especially at our final budget meeting.
Great.
I'm not ready to vote on this because I still have a few more questions. So I feel rushed to make a decision about this. So if you can maybe try to answer and help me understand, if we were to cut this tonight, all of it, like the K-3, what would that look like for us, like moving forward for next year? So again, the students would have to recycle. Would we just go back in and try to just, how hard would it be to get this back onto the budget next year? If we can you sort of paint a picture, would this be challenging, would this be hard? Would we have to sort of wait through a cycle, because we wouldn't really be able to get those third graders, they would move up to fourth grade, they would just have to continue with crappy computers, but then the newer third graders would get new stuff, and yay for them, and then, can you help me kind of wrap my head around that?
My assumption is that, I'll go back to Alex, your analogy around kicking the can down the road, technology wears out, and so if you don't replace it, then you're just behind replacing it, right? It has a replacement cycle, so I think, next year's budget is next year's budget, so if we decide to put this back in for next year, then we would have a one whole new grade replaced, but we still have all those other devices that are old. So I don't know that it would all go to one grade. I'm assuming that we would need to replace some that are working slower than others, and it would probably have to be dispersed amongst the grades. would be my guess.
Yeah, my concern with that then is about an equity issue for our students then, right? So some students are eventually one year going to get new, updated computers and devices that are working fairly quickly, and we're still leaving other students with devices that are the old, recycled, slower, and where's the equity? And that should be a concern to think about as well.
With you in just a second, Anthony. Because I had a similar point that you had just made, Carrie, in my mind about, well, let me start by saying what I heard initially when this amendment was proposed was it was more about the appropriateness of electronic devices in the screen in the hands of younger children. That's what I thought I heard as the basis of the amendment. We've talked about it more recently now as an issue of the ability or the appropriateness of recycling devices. I think from the standpoint of recycling devices, we are going to basically be deferring this cost to the future because we're basically not buying devices now that we should be buying, and we're going to be in a place in the future where we're going to need to catch up on those replacements. So I feel it's a short-sighted, generally reducing the quality of electronic devices, perhaps resulting in an equity issue amongst the student population about who has a better device and who doesn't. So I'm very nervous to just jump in the middle of a conversation or a calculation that our technology director has made towards the appropriateness of how many devices we should be buying year in and year out to keep the right flow of devices in our student population. On the other side of this is the appropriateness of devices in our younger students' hands and screen time. And I think that's a much bigger conversation than we're going to resolve tonight. Frankly, I think if we were going to try to decide whether, what is the appropriate medium for our curriculum and educational materials in these younger age groups, we should have that conversation. Maybe we will. But we're not just taking the iPads away is not going to result in a perfect $29,000 reduction like we were saying earlier. There's going to be a need to present that curriculum and use materials in other ways that could bring additional costs. There's unknown consequences of that. I had a 19-year-old son, and I got him an iPad 20 years ago thinking it was a genius idea, and I really regret doing it because at the time it was a whiz-bang new thing, and now we realize what kind of problems they have with young kids. So the conversation around are iPads appropriate for our kindergartners, or what the appropriate usage of those things are, heck, I think we should probably talk about that more. But I think it's a very coarse and rough way to try to just sit here now and just say, let's just scrape them out to save money right now without really understanding or having the right goal in mind for what we should be doing in the classroom with these younger kids. So far, the direction has been we're using devices. We've been giving these kids devices. We've been replacing these devices, and we have a curriculum built around those devices. Should we be changing that? Perhaps, but I don't think just taking it away and making everyone react to it is the right way to go forward. So I can't tell, I'm somewhat against this amendment, but if there's other folks here who want to keep talking about it, feel free. Anthony.
Is the cost roughly $85,000? Is that roughly equal to the cost of a science teacher?
So the cost of the science teacher is $79,860, whereas the Chromebooks and,
It was 85, so it's close.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, my initial thought on this one was mostly not to have poorer quality equipment, was leaning towards K1, 2, potentially not get, or this year, K not getting books, and moving forward that way. Because I'm not in favor of kicking it down, that's why I didn't vote earlier on the teacher thing, because I don't want to take it out of anywhere that we're going to have to spend it next year. So the only way I would do this is thinking that we are looking at not providing electronics to kindergartners or pre-K kids. On a similar boat to Joe, I did that. My son's in computer science, but I still regret giving him early on because I thought I was doing the right thing. I never saw the boy again. So that's why I was, unfortunately, the 85, to do that, I don't think we can make up enough. And of course, in my mind, I'm still, if we made this cut, I would immediately make the motion to take the science teacher off, or bring the entire science teacher back. Because in my mind, I'm still trying to find that science teacher at the high school. Because it's killing me that we're cutting a STEM program. And that just seems to me there's some way we could find a way to bring that back, so. Anyways, that was why, I was more after taking it away from the youth, and unfortunately, we're kind of stuck at this point.
This will just be a short comment, that the idea that we're kicking the can down the road, and we're just gonna incur this cost later, is working on the assumption that replacing these devices at all is a good idea. And so it's not, I would describe it, in my circles, we just call that non-creative thinking. You're happy to think inside the box. And what I'm saying is, once you start thinking outside the box a little bit, and you start thinking, do we even need those? Then it just opens up the whole idea of, well, maybe we're not kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly on that one. I mean, we are in an age of laptops. I didn't have one when I was in high school, but the kids before me, I mean, I think if we go back far enough, people were using chalk and little tablets, right? I mean, there's the technology of the day is what we're talking about. And I
It
think
was a
that,
better time.
yeah, I mean, I think you know, we're essentially in a situation where we're trying to make sure that the kids in our schools have appropriate technology of good quality.
That's the word, appropriate.
Appropriate, yes. And while we're not in a debate tonight about what the appropriate technology is, right? But I think that's what you want to go with this.
No, what I want to do is I just want to make sure that we are thinking, that we're not accepting the idea that we're just kicking the can down the road.
Hmm.
I really want us to think that, and we're voting on the budget right now. That's all that we're doing. So I don't want to get into this talk about these devices in the schools in general. But since other people have brought up the idea that, well, we're just gonna have to pay for this next year, I'm just saying that's not creative thinking. The creative thinking is, maybe we're not doing that. Maybe this is the first step to liberating ourselves from this annual cost that is, I think, untenable. Anyway, so that's my comment.
Alex, you have one?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of echo what you had said, Joe, that I think the discussion is much bigger. I would probably tend to agree with Anthony on the need for the lower ages, but I think I would be more comfortable leaving the teacher out, the Chromebooks in for the time being, because we don't know what the discussion later on would lead to. And I don't know, I do think it's not necessarily the best time to make a big decision like that has potentially impacts, you know, the general operation of the school. So.
Kyle?
Everybody's brought up great points, and I think that, looking at this, I think it would be, without putting and collaborating and kind of looking at it, potentially phasing it out over time and seeing what that looks like, because obviously we're working on a curriculum that, 5 years out, like where our goals are gonna be, so we'd end up, if they're already building the curriculum to get that, obviously the Chromebooks and the iPads are all in part of that, so it'd be something we'd have to phase out over time, I think, and can't happen tomorrow. So that's where I guess sit with that.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. All right, any more on this amendment? Any more thoughts, discussion before we move to vote? All right, and again, the amendment on the table is the elimination of funding for kindergarten and third grade electronic devices, iPads, and Chromebooks. A vote in favor of the amendment will eliminate those, and a vote against the amendment will maintain the budget recommendation of administration. So, all those in favor of the amendment? That's one. All those opposed? That is 8. the motion, it does not carry, the amendment does not carry. So what brings us back, oh, go ahead.
Oh, you can finish. I just have some questions for Gabby, and then I'm gonna make the motion.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, we're getting back now. The main motion on the floor is the approval of the recommended budget. There are no amendments that have passed to date, so we're back at that primary discussion. Go ahead, Ashley.
So I have a couple questions for Gabby before I make a motion to put back in the science teacher and cover it with the unallocated balance. So last year was a 15% increase, $900,000. $550 of that went towards a carryover. So even if that increase were lower at 10%, the carryover balance still would have been safe, correct? So let's say the average is 10 to 15% carryover, unallocated at the end of the year, the carryover balance is fairly safe. And the only way that wouldn't happen is if every warrant article or many of them were overspent and we had to use that up, which has probably never happened.
So just so we're clear, we can't spend the unallocated fund balance. We can only spend the approved budget and the reserve funds.
Right, but what I'm saying, at the end of this fiscal year, there wouldn't be any unallocated balance if we overspent by a lot, right?
If we expend
Or
all of the budget.
But spent every dime we budgeted.
That's right.
That's more likely, right?
That's
Like
right.
every single warrant article comes in at exactly zero, we spent every dime, which never happens, but that's when we would have zero.
So the likelihood is fairly low. So it's a gamble, but it's a fairly low one.
Yes, it is.
So I'm gonna make a motion to put back in the high school science teacher and to be covered by the unallocated fund balance.
Is there a second to that? Jamie? All right, discussion around the amendment, and I think it's worth just repeating it again, just to make sure we have it correct, correctly reflected.
That would be helpful.
Yeah,
Who seconded it? Can I just, Jamie?
Jamie seconded. Yeah. So there's an amendment to the recommended budget to bring back the science teacher and explain the second part of that one more time.
So that, and the $80,000 would be covered by $80,000 pulled from unallocated fund balance.
Increase the carryover by
Increase the
$80,000.
Okay. Peter?
I realize that this isn't the reason we established it, but didn't we establish, or do we use it somewhere else, regular ed reserve fund?
We do.
We had it.
100,000, is it correct?
It is.
Well, we upped it
We
this
are
year.
proposing for next year it will be higher
Yeah.
in case we end up with all these employees and no title money.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
the one we're
proposed.
putting the extra,
Correct.
Yeah.
but then we're
200.
changing it, but we're changing the wording, so if we don't need it, it can go into
For the
facilities.
200,000 that we're
Yeah.
proposing.
Yeah, the
to
200,000
increase.
is.
So right now we have 100, we're proposing adding 200 more, so it will be a total of 300, right?
Correct.
Right, yeah. With that 200 going, you
So
know,
would be, I realize we're talking about this one, but just trying to think in that whole world, because that's all coming from allocated.
correct.
So the only reason I bring this up is just to confuse the issue.
Thank you.
You're very
Have at
welcome.
it.
I very much appreciate your enthusiasm. Can we not, because potentially a lot of these issues that we're unsure about are gonna come out around in the next couple months, or month or so. Would it not be better if we chose to go this route, to put that $80,000 in that same category? And then if nothing comes, we can use it to, hire the teacher.
By the time we know that, it will end up like we were last year. There'll be nobody left to hire. Like, if
Well,
we
you
don't
have a
hire this
pile on your
spring,
desk right now of applicants?
No.
yeah. If we don't hire this spring, we won't be able to hire.
So I just was trying to give us a little bit of leeway and time
Yeah.
to maybe, if all of a sudden we did hear the horror news, it's still sitting there in that same category, was all I was thinking.
Yeah, if we're not, yeah. Science in particular is, if you don't hire in the spring, the chances of you hiring are pretty slim.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, just before you go, okay, in my mind, some of the things that Peter just talked about, the uncertainty of the coming year, having a comfortable buffer in, with this unallocated funds. I don't know if I completely understand it. I'm not an accountant like you, Ashley, so I don't quite know exactly the real impacts of what's happening. But so what I'm asking more than anything is, does this impact our potential to react to some kind of unknown situation in the coming year if federal funding is removed or something like that? No?
This will not impact our ability to deal with the lack of federal funding because it's going, whatever we don't move forward, this
Yeah.
$80,000,
Yes.
you know, taken out of contact or out of the equation, whatever's left in the unallocated fund balance, we can't touch,
Okay.
no matter what we do.
Without going back to voters.
The funds,
'Cause
right.
We're talking about taking unallocated funds from this past fiscal year, right? And moving it forward into the budget now.
Correct.
Correct. Right.
Not this year we're in right now.
No, you can't.
So we're
Correct.
moving
This
into
is
the
next
next year. Right.
Correct.
Right.
Do you get a feeling about this year?
No,
Come on.
nope. I just said I haven't had time to do a
This
projection.
is why,
I'm
this
not
is
gonna
why I
touch
didn't
it.
let her
Not
tell
gonna
you
touch
about
it.
insurance
Not
last
touching
time. Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
It's my motto.
Eben knows what this year's gonna be, I can see
Oh,
it.
Evan's got a great,
I have a clarifying question.
yeah.
If we increase the carryover from 550 to 630, which I believe is 550 plus 80,
Woo.
does that then next year, if we don't carry over the 630, put us already in an automatic hole in terms of building a budget?
Yeah,
Actually.
Just checking.
Thank you, Evan.
Oh, sorry, you have something you wanted to add to the budget conversation, because it's,
I have a question.
okay, we'll go to you, Ashley, sorry.
Oh, mine was already answered.
Oh, got answered, okay, great.
My question is, we budget 79 or 80,000 for a teacher, but if we hire a teacher that costs 90,000, we still would hire that teacher.
yes.
Yeah.
And we would
We
have
do
to
that
find
we
the
do that
10,000
anytime.
from somewhere else?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you may hire a $90,000 teacher, but then you may have hired somebody right out of college and they cost 55, right? Like, that, all of that is unpredictable, and it's all in warrant Article 1 unless it's a special ed teacher, so it all just gets evened out.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry.
Like Joe, I'm not an accountant. Can you explain what Eben just said?
Sure. So when Carrie had originally proposed it, I had interjected that my concern is that there will be a larger cliff the next year. So what that means is, we have typically been carrying forward $555,000. If we increase it to $630,000, we will need to maintain that amount of carryover to offset the next budget, or it's an automatic increase to the taxpayers of the $80,000
For the next budget
for the
season.
next budget season.
Okay.
But isn't that just relative, though, to how the budget's gonna be next year?
Yep,
We don't know.
but we
So
don't
in
know what
that-
the budget's gonna be.
You could still start with 55,000, and your budget could end up being $80,000 less than it was this year.
Correct.
So then
It
it
could
doesn't
be.
really matter.
What we do know is that we will not budget at 10% increase for health insurance again.
Nope, we won't do that.
So you can assume that the budget will come in at a 12% increase on health insurance. Like, we cannot risk that again.
12? We'll have to
I
talk
like
about
that number.
I
I
don't
like
know.
that number. We
Go
can, we can
20.
fight
She
it out in the
wants 14,
basement.
15.
Yeah.
What's that?
She wants
14 or
14 or
15.
15.
Yeah, let's be real.
Go high, and then when you come
Exactly.
low, savings all around.
All right. More thoughts on the motion on the floor? Okay. Again, what's on the floor is an amendment to bring back the science teacher to the high school by offsetting it with an unallocated funds from the current year,
Fiscal year 24.
fiscal year 24. All those in favor? There's two. All those opposed? Okay, does not pass. All right, we are, again, back to the original discussion of the motion on the floor, which is to approve the budget as recommended by administration. Any further discussion around that? Anthony?
I've talked to several folks in the town of Greene who were very concerned about the cost of instructional coaches, which is why I asked for those numbers. And I wanted to make sure that I understood the reduction to the towns that was the potential, should we go that route. I just want to say that I'm not recommending that we do that. I think that the curriculum work that's going on, I think the assumption is that these people are not directly teaching the students, and I think that there's work that they do that's involved with the curriculum that we're in the middle of that I think would be, it would be disruptive at this point. I do think that at some point, we might want to think about looking at how effective they are in increasing test scores, but I don't think that this is the time for that. And I just needed that to be stated so that the folks who've talked to me understand that I knew what these numbers are, but I don't think that as enticing as that 3.44% is, I don't think that this is the time for that.
Any other points of discussion here before we move on this budget? Seeing none. Seeing none. We'll move to vote. And again, a vote in favor of the motion is to approve the budget for fiscal year 26 as recommended tonight by the administration. A vote against it would be to not, which I'm not quite sure where we would go from there, but, so, anyhow, all those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed? 2 opposed. The motion carries. We have a budget. All right.
Everybody know I'm mad about the science teacher.
Yes.
I just want that on the record. I
You're not allowed.
voted yes, but I'm
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah. All right.
You can do that.
So we have a couple procedural things to do. I've nominated Peter to help me with this one here. So I'd like to call for a motion to act on the proposed creation and elimination of positions.
You ready?
Yeah, it's good.
All
We'll
right.
say that top part first.
Do you want me to hold
No,
it?
I got it. That's why I have these. They're even leopard print.
So fancy.
I'm sorry.
No, that's what's coming. I move to create and eliminate the following positions. Created positions: Turner Elementary School teacher, Levitt Area High School English teacher, Levitt Area High School Special Education teacher, Greene Central School Special Education teacher, Leeds Central School Library Ed Tech 3, Tripp Middle School, Greene Central School Special Education Building Coordinator, and a district-wide school psychologist. You want to do
Yeah,
them
keep
together
going.
or separate?
I
I'll
have
write
all
down
as
the
one.
list. Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
yeah.
Now for the eliminated positions, at the Levitt Area High School, an academic support teacher, a science teacher, sorry, an in-school suspension monitor Ed Tech 3, a special education Ed Tech 1. At Tripp Middle School, a world language teacher, a literacy lab Ed Tech 3. At Turner Primary School, a primary teacher, and a special education Ed Tech 1. At Greene Central School, 3 Ed Tech 3s, and a special education Ed Tech 3. At Turner Elementary School, special education Ed Tech 1, special education Ed Tech 1, and Turner Elementary, Turner Primary School, special education Ed Tech 1. At Leeds Central School, a special education Ed Tech 1. And district-wide, 2 speech pathologists, 1 elementary librarian, a transportation Ed Tech 1 bus aide, a facilities specialist, and a board-certified behavior analyst.
That's the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Kyle. Any discussion around this? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So I need names.
Yeah.
I didn't get the
Can you
names.
guys raise again,
Yeah,
please?
all those in favor?
Ashley, Bree, Peter.
Just to remind everyone, this is mirroring what we just approved in the budget. So,
Yes, this fails, it's going, that gets confusing.
yes.
Thank you.
I am taking,
And all those
taking a
opposed, wait, hold on.
stance.
All those opposed?
Okay.
All those opposed, there's just one? No, we have three.
Three
Three
opposed.
opposed. Do you have the names? Okay.
Thank you.
The motion passes. I will then now take a motion. In fact, I'll just make it myself here because it's something else that is procedural that we need to read. I'll make a motion that I move that the vote entitled "Vote to Call and Approve the Warrants for the Budget Meeting and the Budget Validation Referendum and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted be approved in form presented to this meeting and that a copy of said vote be included in the minutes of this meeting." Second by Alex. Any discussion around this?
So Joe, you made the motion?
I made the motion,
Okay,
Alex seconded.
Alex is second, thank you.
Yes. Any more discussion? No? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay. All right, so that moves us now towards the signatures of the required budget documents.
I'm gonna bring blue pens.
Okay?
I'm gonna ask that
I
you
got a
return
red
said
one
blue
sitting right
pens.
here, can I use?
And this, if you recall, you have to sign it in the exact same order on every document, so don't be moving your seats.
Yeah.
And then you keep them, I'm sorry.
I do.
Pens, pens, pens. Pens. Carrie, can you grab one for us?
Charles, your school board
Hey, I
votes.
don't like
All the
it.
pages that are associated.
for it, but I didn't I?
All those are different.
Take it back.
Probably.
Just keep those dated with that document.
Yes.
It's a pen, it's a gift.
Give me a pen.
That's our bonus.
Yeah.
That's
You
your,
get a
that's your
bonus?
budget season bonus, right there.
At least they weren't the, was it Rose or something?
Joe, I have extras for you to sign.
It's even a bit.
It is.
Velocity. Ooh, I
It's a
got,
nice- It's a nice
I'm gonna cut it fast, I'm gonna
glide.
write fast. This is velocity.
Cheap pens.
I don't know, it's a big fat
Actually,
ball
you
on
can
it
put
though.
that with that.
Yeah.
You don't sign that
Ooh,
one.
that's right there. It is. Go to Gabby's office, is the office you wanna go to. So you said we
No.
can sign most
Those are
anywhere?
my pens. I couldn't find any other blue pens.
These are black.
I love those.
Bring it on.
But they run out of ink quickly, so I'm gonna have to find a
That's a
new.
lot I just signed there.
I have
Is
to
that just
find a new
all
pen
one?
after that.
It must've been a different file, because this one's only
It's
one
all,
page.
yeah, some of them are all.
Jamie? You
I
want
got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Out of my hands, it's completely solid. 2 pages.
Such animosity. Over a pen.
Yes, yeah, we had the wording, we had the wording.
It's like handing over a dirty diaper.
Oh, I'll type it in, just say Carrie do this. Okay, I'm just saying.
Do we vote on that?
You could do that if you wanted.
Really?
Here, you got this.
Thank you, thank you.
Kyle, she took it away from me.
I thought that was your bonus.
Find that one?
Yes, I had selected.
Is that just for Joe?
Look, did it see what, did you see the ink in mine?
Thanks.
No, my number got called, but then they called like 30-something numbers, and they only picked 8 from that.
Yeah.
No.
Pens are
Yeah,
fast.
that's what I was hoping I would.
Don't hang up on the paper. Roll. It was kind of cool.
What is this little case? It's on the guy over.
No, that's just Joe. Joe
Hopefully.
gets
Woman died.
Yeah, you don't have to sign those.
That's not fair.
Just because I don't think I know nobody wants to deal with it. Hopefully I don't have to worry about
Oh, did I let him keep the pen?
Yes.
Thank you.
I now have a blue pen.
How'd that work out? He gets a bonus.
What?
So,
All right.
I'll cut it up, we'll share it.
All right,
We just say out loud that the budget meeting is
Yes.
Thursday, May 2nd at the high, what?
no, it's not this
Oh
second.
my God, just kidding.
It's Thursday, May
May
8th at the high
Yeah.
school, and the
Ay.
budget referendum vote is the
22nd.
22nd.
Leave it
Yeah.
the second, it all depends upon what kind of turnout you want.
So, I know,
Good lord.
that was kind of anticlimactic, just making all the signatures, but I'm glad we were able to get through the budget tonight, and we'll now move on to our regular meeting, so. Thank you.
This is huge. Thank you. All right, I'll try not to take up your space.
All right, so moving on with our agenda, our next item of business is to act on the minutes from the 14th regular meeting of March 27th, 2025. Any comments on the minutes from March 27th? Seeing none, they are approved by unanimous consent. The next item is a report from the board chair. Just a couple things. One, we've had some emails certainly over the past week. Some of them have been some complaints about poll requests. I just, for what it's worth, I have certainly looked at these complaints. I think that our superintendent is doing her best to process the many FOAs she's received diligently and fairly. I just wanted to say that out loud here at the meeting. The other thing that I'd like to add is that tonight is Jamie's last meeting. So we don't always get to say goodbye to everyone, but Jamie has decided not to run again, and flower and...
I know, they're beautiful.
Here's a card, Jamie.
Even a card.
Yes.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank
Yes.
you for letting me serve.
Thank you for serving.
Yes.
My pleasure.
On the 4th hour of a budget meeting in March.
I know. It is, and that is the one thing I will go out saying, that it is very frustrating, and I will take it up as a community member, that Turner decides to unseat their school board member in the middle of budget
Uh-oh.
season.
We don't want to get into a fight right now. But anyhow, thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
We are going to move on to public comment. Is there anyone here tonight wishing to speak? Yes, okay, so I just want to remind everyone before we get into that, that our board meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying out the official business of our schools. It is important to note that meetings of the board are open to the public, however, they are not public forums. At each full meeting of the board, time is allocated to provide opportunities for citizens and employees to express opinions and concerns related to the matters under consideration by the board. These comments shall be within guidelines set forth in policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings. Copies of the policy are available on the district's website. I would like to highlight the following. The chair is responsible for recognizing all speakers. We ask the speakers identify themselves by sharing their name and town of residence. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to express their views. Speakers should direct all comments to the board, specifically the board chair. This is the opportunity for the board to listen to the opinions of the public that relate to school and education matters, but it is not intended to be a conversation or a debate of issues. We know that school-related issues can be emotional, but we ask that civility is maintained. We will not permit profanity, gossip, defamatory comments, shouting at one another, or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups. The board is faced with many important issues. For the sake of efficiency, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments. The board will not permit complaints or allegations against staff members. We certainly care about these concerns, but they are personnel matters which the board is not permitted to hear in public. So if there are complaints against staff, these will be handled appropriately through our complaint policy KE. Again, this is just a highlight of key points. Please refer to policy BEDH for a complete description. With that, feel free.
Judith Glassman Green, and also librarian at Levitt, and I just want to take this opportunity to publicly thank Jamie for your service to the community. I know I'm from Green, but you have done an amazing job through some trying times, looking out for the best interests of all of us as citizens and as employees of the district, and I personally want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none. We shall move on to communications. Tonight, from a communications perspective, I have one, which is an acknowledgement of a donation to Leeds Central School. I'll just briefly read this paragraph here. And that's that Leeds Central School received a donation of a refrigerator from Agron Appliance in Auburn. The school sent out a request for price for a refrigerator to support the food pantry and cooking club initiative at the school. Al Ketchen from Agron Appliance in Auburn reached out that they would be willing to donate and deliver a refrigerator for the project. The refrigerator was delivered March 24th. This donation will greatly assist in activities supporting the project to teach and encourage students to make healthy eating choices and cook meals. So thank you, Agron Appliance. Carrie.
Yeah, so following resignation, Ashley Barker, Special Ed Tech 2 at Turner Elementary, effective April 18th. Lori Hammond, bus driver, effective April 1st. Shayla LaPierre, so new hires, so bus driver, Shayla LaPierre, Special Ed Tech 2 at Levitt Area High School. And then we have added 2 subs at the elementary level and 1 sub bus driver district-wide.
Okay. Yes, questions?
Just to clarify, does that mean we're down 1 full bus driver again?
We're still down.
We're still down?
Yep.
Okay, but we're down is just what we've been down. We're not down worse.
Correct. I think basically we're holding steady. You know, like, but.
We're holding steady, in bad shape, but we're not in worse shape.
Correct.
It's a good positive spin.
It is. We are not worse off.
There we go.
All right. I don't believe that I have any adjustments to the agenda for tonight. Okay. Committee reports. Finance Committee, we'll start with Ashley.
We did not meet tonight. Our next meeting is on May 1st in Greece.
Okay, thank you very much. I think PTV did meet tonight. Kyle, do you have an update?
Yes, we did meet tonight. We heard voices from the community about stretching the bus route limit to try to accommodate some of the, or a daycare. We listened to that, where we end up deciding that we end up voting no on it, because it looks like it would open up a large lot of stuff that we don't have information on, as such as like how many other daycares have, how many kids they have in other daycares that would actually want to be picked up if we stretch the, beyond the district lines. So we voted that no, but we did recommend it, that we'd end up revisiting and sending it to policy committee to take and revisit our EEA or EAA.
EEA, right, yeah, EEA.
EEA policy, to revisit it, to look at it, because it is a little bit unclear on what the limits are, if to give the direction for the administration to be able to make a better choice. And then we also discussed TPS. They put equipment on the water lines to get that study started and getting it put out to bid. They had a bid on it. So right now we're going to be trying to rush a meeting to review numbers next week potentially, once we lock down a time, and then we'll, at that point, we'll then bring it to the full board to decide on where we go with it. And that's pretty much all we had time for.
Okay.
Our next meeting would be either, potentially next week, where we're trying to lock down a time, and then after that would be May 15th at 5:30 at Leeds Central.
Okay. Go ahead.
I would just like to say, if you're kicking that back to policy committee to review that, when we looked over that, we intentionally left some of it vague because we wanted to allow the transportation director to make those calls. So if that's not what PTB wants, then I would suggest like giving policy committee an avenue, like what do you want? Like if you want it to be specific, giving them recommendations. Just so that they know going forward what you guys are looking for clarification on.
Sure, good, Karen.
Can I ask, did you mean to leave it vague that it wasn't just within our borders?
No,
Okay, because that's the part that, it actually doesn't say anywhere in there that the bus routes will only be within our borders. That was the part that we were like, it doesn't actually say that.
It doesn't give us a
Right.
actually town line,
Right.
district, Holton, Bangor.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
it
wasn't
is-
the rest of it, like, that was literally the part where, when I read it, when this came up, I was like, oh my gosh, it doesn't actually say our bus routes will only be in the towns.
Yeah, there was just that verbiage that
Yeah.
didn't really define exactly, because it talks about the student pickup and everything.
so that's
else,
what you're looking for
Yeah.
clarification on.
It was that.
Sorry.
Peter, yeah.
We just have to make also sure that we don't get too specific, because bus routes
100%.
can cross out of
Correct.
town to get back into the town.
Yes,
So
100%.
just, we gotta make sure, because all of a
Yeah.
sudden, if you make it too strict,
I
we're
know.
like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, can't cross over.
Good point.
Especially over to West Turner, that happens quite a bit, you know, go
Good
from one
point.
town to another.
I'm also
Agree.
thinking of transportation for special students that are not.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think,
Outside our
yeah,
No,
roads,
they-
but,
correct,
but
yeah.
we'll have a lot
yeah.
more to talk
And
about.
maybe we'll realize that it shouldn't be tighter, like, who knows, but I think that was the surprise, reading it that way and realizing that it didn't actually say
Right.
that.
So. All right, thank you, Kyle. Any more questions on that? All right. We'll move on to policy committee. Jamie?
We did not meet tonight. Next meeting is May 1st at Green Central School. We have 2 policies on the agenda, but they're not on the consent agenda, so they'll be open for discussion at that time.
Okay. Curriculum committee, Bree.
So we met tonight and we got an overview of the visual and performing arts standards, pre-K through 12th grade. We had Iva Damon and Rebecca Truillo from the high school and the art teacher from the high school and the art teacher from Leeds Central and Green Central School to share out their work on those standards. And tonight, you're going to see before you again another chance to vote on the math, the standards for the math curriculum. With that being said, Teresa is going to do another more in-depth, thorough report out about that. So then moving forward, it was suggested in our curriculum committee that we will present and do a presentation about standards prior to asking the board to vote. So it will be similar to the feeling of the policy committee of like a first read and then a second read. So it'll be a presentation of the standards, that's like your first reading. You'll have time to look over the standards and read them and have the presentation and the documents. And then come back in a couple weeks and do a vote. And hopefully you'll find that process to be more beneficial than what we tried 2 weeks ago with the math ones.
First time.
We meet again on May 15th at Leeds Central at 5:30.
Okay. Questions here? Thank you, Bree. Next we'll go to our student representative report. Coral. Hi.
Oh, I kind of wrote a mess. Okay. So, tickets are officially on sale for the spring show. Great news.
Remind us of the dates.
May 9th and 10th, 6:30. Tomorrow we have a Boston field trip for art classes to the museum, Boston Museum of Fine Arts.
Just getting an assist from the audience.
What? I didn't hear anything. Very excited for that. And last meeting, I was asked for a number of days till graduation.
Oh, thank you.
I got one. 59 days. So sad. That's all I have.
Any questions for Coral?
Where can you buy tickets?
Yeah.
Online.
Just the district website?
I don't know.
Oh.
We were sent a link today and I just saw it as I walked in here.
Mr. Shaw, do you know?
It will be posted, it's not currently posted.
Okay.
Any reason why you're not going to Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum? Is it expensive?
Another assist from the audience.
Right, I'm sorry. We didn't budget for that one. Yeah. All right. We are bringing back administrator reports tonight after a long hiatus, even though it still feels like this was a longer budget meeting than I think we expected. But we'll start off with our host principal, Ms. Mates from Tripp Middle School.
Yeah, you guys have the budget reports. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I continue to update with data, most specifically with our bar data, which talks about the different tiered levels. Happy that we remain within the recommended levels or slightly doing better than the recommended. The other two things I wanted to point out is in a building of 2 grade levels, the spring comes with lots of transition activities. And so we're working hard on getting our 8th graders opportunities to visit the high school and get questions answered about courses and their experience there. And then we've started doing our assistant principal and counselor go to visit the elementary schools to meet the students and answer some of their questions about what middle school is going to look like. And then next month, those same 6th grade students will come up to the middle school and do a tour and have lunch with us. And then the following month, they come up for a field day and to meet their advisors. And every year, we've sort of increased those opportunities to help eliminate some of the anxiety that 6th graders and their families have about transitioning to the middle school. And that seems to be a really positive change. And again, the more opportunities we have to meet them, the more we learn about where a good placement for them here would be. And then the other thing I'm proud to share is with the start of the spring sports season, we have 86% of our population participating in an extracurricular or co-curricular activity. None of them
I love hearing that percentage, so.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Very good. Any questions for Ms. Mates? Thank you very much. We'll move on to the Lead Central School Principal, Ms. Bartash.
Yesterday was ours, we have our refrigerator that got donated. It would be our first cooking club, the Eagle's Nest Cafe, where Teresa and her sister came over and lots of staff members. We had, our numbers kept increasing. We started with 12, but ended up with 17 kids that came. We taught them to make hummus. They learned to cut their own fruits and vegetables with child-safe knives. Then they made Nutella hummus. And got to take that home. They're going to come back this next week, so we're just kind of doing 2 rounds. It's more to get us used to what we're doing for the students, but they're going to come back. We had some beef donated, so we're going to be, the students will be making chili to take home to their parents, because we also still have some chickpeas left over and some beans. And then we ended up with an abundance of apples that kids didn't cut, so we're going to turn that into some dessert for them. So the goal is, I mean, we have that refrigerator, we have the food insecurity donation that was given to us, and that's what we're doing with this. And so the goal is to kind of help them cook for themselves and get stuff, healthy food, instead of just giving them something here to eat to fill their stomachs, but to teach them to go forward.
It sounds like it's popular with the students. If my kid's coming home raving about it as anything there, it sounds like the kids are excited about it, so. I did have one thing I wanted to highlight. I don't know when the last time we talked was, but it's pretty remarkable referral numbers down year over year. Any particular thing you want to credit that to, or is that
just overall in the building, I mean, last year about this time, we implemented work on a solid tier 1 on PBIS, just making sure that we had the expectations up for students and, here's what we expect in this area and reteaching those expectations. We've also, as part of the SIG grant, we brought in restorative circles. So when students have problems or teachers and students have problems, we just get them to, we talk about it and go it that way. Just keeping those two things running in place.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? Oh, just a glasses adjustment.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our Director of Special Education, Ms. Drysdale.
Great. Teresa might mention this, I didn't put this in my board report, but today, Superintendent Gillis, myself, and Principal Kristen Conway. I've been here a while, my mind is starting to mush, so it's good I'm presenting now, talking now, I guess. We went today to an inclusion conference where they had districts from all over Maine attend, and we shared our audit process. We presented for an hour-long presentation, and then we were also part of a panel with 3 other districts regarding the work that we're doing here in the district. And so that was exciting to be able to share our work, very similar to the presentation that we have provided here as well. And I don't have anything else other than that to share, to celebrate. And if you have any questions about my board report, I'm ready to answer that.
Sure, sure. Anyone off the bat? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to, I don't think Principal Fuller could be here tonight.
But Lindsay
But
Holst
yes,
is.
yes, I should have written that down.
Lindsay Holst is.
Should have written that down.
So I'm Lindsay Holst, I'm the Dean of Students at Turner Primary School, so I do have Kim's report, so bear with my voice, I was teaching first grade yesterday. So overall attendance data at our schools at 94%. I play a large part in that, in my role, communicating with families, plans, moving forward. So it's nice that we are sitting at the 94% with that. As far as the data goes for referrals, I know it's trending like we are higher than we were last year. Some of that is due to staff actually referring. And documenting that. We are using that as a tool to drive instruction that I do with kids, students that I meet with, groups that I meet with, and also targeted instruction for certain grade levels. As far as professional development, TPS, we went and practiced reunification drills at Levitt with Evan's help. Kim wanted to communicate that it was very well developed, it was organized, all of our staff went through it definitely. We went from the parent perspective, so it was very organized and very thought out. Several of our staff have participated in the regulated classroom. I myself have as part of like train the trainer, so that is something that I bring back to staff when we do our 2 staff meetings in the beginning of the school year. So that is something that, even if it is discontinued by the DOE, it is still something. I still have trainings in my office. We are still able to provide that to staff because it is really awesome. Elaine Gammon, our instructional coach, has been training our teachers on how to administer the benchmark assessment for our inter-reading instructional materials. She's been instrumental with that. Staffing update, current openings, we have 2 special ed tech 3 positions, 2 special ed tech 2 positions, and a primary teaching position, which interviews are being scheduled. Academic highlight, Kim has been visiting classrooms when she is able to. She is seeing engaging vocabulary and grammar. I myself have also seen that when I have had to push into classrooms. So teachers are doing a really great job implementing the new H curriculum. Students seem to be very excited about it. so their engagement is high. And then our overall winter school assessment, our student growth, our students are showing growth. Events and activities, during March, we celebrated Read Across America. So we had a lot of activities that month. Dressed like a Seuss character, Wear Words Day, Crazy Hair Day. Tomorrow we are visiting TES is visiting us, and we're partner reading with them. That's something we have been doing for several years now, where each classroom is partnered with a classroom from TES. So it's a really great way to bring our schools together. And I think that was it. Oh, the Heart Association, we just got the numbers for Jump Rope for Heart for TPS, and we were able to raise over $4,000 for Jump Rope for Heart.
Very good. Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you much. I hope you can get some tea or something to help you out there with.
We'll see. Oh, it's fun.
All right, moving on to our Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Gillis.
So Rebecca did note that we attended and presented at the Maine Inclusive Education Conference today. And on Monday, I was able to attend the Maine Curriculum Leaders Association. It was the annual conference, and the focus was on multi-tiered systems of support with Katie Novak. She also spoke at today's conference. She's dynamic and smart. Curriculum work this evening, the recommended math curriculum is on the agenda. It's an agenda item. I'm going to try to dig myself out of the hole and see if my presentation will help clarify some points. And Bree did mention the visual and performing arts curriculum was shared at the curriculum committee this evening and approved unanimously to move to the full board for a vote, but we're going to do that in stages, as Bree noted, and I have no additional updates at this time on grants. That's it.
Any questions there? Seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent, Ms. Meg.
Yeah. So the principal search for Turner Primary School is ongoing. I want to thank Alex for participating in that. We've met twice, and we'll be meeting again next week, and hopefully we'll be on track. That's all I'm going to say. And just to give you sort of some of the things that I've been up to now that we're coming out of budget season, we've had 2 weeks since our last meeting. Some of the things that I do regularly. So last week, Ed Leadership met. We meet every 2 weeks, every week during budget season pretty much, to talk about all kinds of things that are happening in the district, helping us make decisions. This coming week, next week, we'll be spending time on the crisis communication plan. If you recall, we used some grant money to contract with Rink Advertising to help us develop a crisis communication plan. They've delivered that plan to myself. Teresa and I have gone over it, but now we're going to make sure principals have access to it and some training on it. Reunification training happened for both Turner Primary School and Green Central School on the half day we had last week. I had regular meetings with Jana, Kristen, and Shannon, do that each month with each principal. Teresa, Rebecca, and I met with all the pre-K teachers last Friday as part of our planning to bring on the 3- and 4-year-olds for FAPE. And I meet weekly with Rebecca, Gabby, and Teresa. And then yesterday I was at the Western Maine Superintendent's meeting, which is always very helpful in terms of hearing what's happening in other districts, how superintendents are resolving things, and we also tend to get updates from the state when they've got stuff to share with us, so that's what I've been up to.
Very good. Any questions for the superintendent? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Just as a reminder, these items are to be acted upon collectively unless a board member asks that a specific item be acted upon individually. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Well, sorry, before I do that, is there any item in the consent agenda tonight that anyone would like to pull? Yes, Andrew.
9.1, please.
9.1. All of 9.1?
Yep.
Okay. All of 9.1. So the consent agenda tonight, seeing no other hands, is for item 9.2, the consideration of Finance Committee recommendation of approval, January and February operating and expenditure reports. All
Make
those
a
in-
motion.
You'll make the motion, Bree? Okay, anyone second? Peter? All those in favor of the consent agenda? That is unanimous. We are moving item 9.1. We'll move that down to, we're not gonna put it behind our executive sessions, we'll put it just in front of them. Probably, we'll go effectively right into 11.3.5, I would say, just before 11.4.
11.3.5.
11.3.5.
Fix that somehow.
All right, as we've talked about here, old business, there's been, we're bringing back the curriculum committee recommended mathematics curriculum. I don't believe we need to make a motion for that. I think it's just coming back from last meeting, or was there a motion last meeting to postpone? I apologize that I wasn't here.
There was a motion to approve, and then we postponed, so we have the motion that was approved.
Okay.
Bree made it,
It was
Kyle seconded it.
Specifically postponed to tonight. So
Yep.
we are into that without the need for
Correct.
any additional authorization.
Yep.
Discussion around the approved curriculum. I think actually what I heard was Teresa has a presentation.
Mini presentation.
So let's jump right into it.
With some handouts in color, printed on both sides, same paper. It needs to be in color. Let's just put it that way.
Can't we don't have
Yes,
to-
it does.
That's
I agree.
short. Sorry, I'm very.
You'll see why. Would you like this?
Pen.
Take one and pass it on, please.
If there's an extra, I'll take it back
There's a
so
lot
I
of
can have it
extras.
for the,
Oh, there
send them
should
back so that
Yeah,
I've got
that's
it
really
for the
cool.
Well,
reference.
one
Gabby
for each
probably
hand.
wants one so she can see how pretty it is.
No,
Because
she
she
doesn't.
cares about the math standards.
Gabby, you want this?
I want it in black and white.
Everybody's got one right over there.
All right, so we're back to revisit this, and Carrie is going to advance this slide.
I am.
All right, so this slide has been annotated to more clearly identify the pieces of this report. And you have been given a copy of what this looks like. Sorry, Jamie, it's behind you, and Alex, and Kyle. So, here I chose the kindergarten and first grade standards, and they are side by side, and that was done intentionally. So you can see the focus, so this area really is on counting and cardinality. So if you look at the top, the green bubble says mathematics, because that is from the main learning results. So math was last adopted in 2020. Then underneath it, you'll see in red, that's the grade level, kindergarten. If you go down underneath next, you'll see the strand, quantitative reasoning. You may remember that there are 4 strands in math, quantitative reasoning being one of them. And then underneath that, you will see the standard, labeled QRC1. Know the number and names and the count sequence. So if you look at the standard, the strand and the standard, you'll see in first grade on the right side, there are none. That is because in kindergarten, the focus is heavily on counting and cardinality, whereas by first grade, that is not an area of focus for the students that have already mastered. I mean, of course, it remains an area, but at that point, we hope, and then you can see the essential skills along with the performance indicators, which are down below. And then there are supporting standards below that. So each of those little bubble tags identifies what the supporting essential standards, performance indicators strand. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that specific page. Okay. Next. Here I've chosen to show both 4th and 5th grade, and you'll see at the top that the strand, quantitative reasoning, and the standard, QRC7, are identical. It's the performance indicator underneath that varies. So on the left side for 4th grade, the committee selected performance indicator for NBT V5 as essential. They also selected that as essential in 5th grade. But if you look at the wording in 5th grade, it's slightly nuanced because the expectations are more advanced. And I can read them aloud to you, or you can read them. So I know questions came up about why are essential standards picked at some grade levels and not at other grade levels. I was trying to show a continuum here for you. All right, the next slide gets smaller, but it shows you grades 6, 7, and 8. Here the standard is the same. It's GREA1 across all 3 grade levels. But you can see that the performance indicators vary, again showing the differences between grade level skills that are expected. So in the red, the ones that are circled red, those are essential standards. The ones that are circled in orange are the supporting standards. But you can see them side by side and where there are some differences and some similarities. And then the final slide here shows you an example of the high school standards. These are grades 9 to diploma. Students at Leavitt take 3 courses that are required: Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. However, within these courses, there are varied levels. So there might be an advanced algebra and some other different variations of algebra. So I believe there are 4 different levels.
With algebra, there's probably 3.
Okay. So there's probably 3. But the committee worked really hard to identify the essential standards, what students would be expected to know and do as part of them taking their required courses. So it gets much more varied, I would say, at high school. And because these are grades 9 through diploma, they may meet them at different times before they graduate. They're not all going to necessarily meet them as a result of taking their Algebra 1 advanced class. They might, because not all students are taking the same. So I don't know if there are any questions about what I have provided you with.
I don't have any. Anyone else around the table? Seeing none. Seeing none. And again, I apologize for not being here at the last meeting, so I'm not 100% sure how that conversation went, but let's continue it. Now, the motion that's on the floor was made originally by Bree Allard. It was seconded by Kyle to approve the curriculum committee recommended mathematics curriculum. So is there any further discussion around the mathematics curriculum now? Seeing none, we won't waste any more time. We'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion? It appears unanimous. All right. Move on to new business. Item 11.1 is consideration of policy committee recommended first reading and acknowledgement of revised policy JICJ, student use of personal electronic devices at school, and regulations JICJR, student use of personal electronic devices at school, administrative procedures. Would anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Peter, seconded by Jamie. Discussion. I don't know, do you want to just jump right in, Peter?
Oh, go for it.
Or does someone like to?
I have a presentation.
Okay, well, very good.
I
Very good.
just unfortunately can't find my note, but I'll just follow my notes up here if you're gonna show it.
I've got it.
Okay, awesome, let's go. Okay, so this first slide, actually is the wording that is in the policy in front of you. It really is at the heart of what Principal Shaw and Principal Mates and the other elementary principals have been talking about. When we went back after committee and after reviewing again with the administrators, we did make sure that we added in the sentence near the middle, these devices may not be used at school or during school activities, including transportation, in any manner that disrupts the educational process or violates board policies or school rules. So I wanted to spend some time going over the survey results.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just the statement you just read,
Yes.
including transportation, meaning device use on the way in the morning to school or after school, or is this
That is a
field
great question.
field trip transportation, or is
So-
it athletic activities?
Let me
transportation?
highlight the
Yeah.
important part of that sentence that I read is in any manner that disrupts the educational process or violates board's policies or school rules. It does not say that they are not allowed to be used on transportation. So may not be used at school or during school activities in any manner that disrupts the educational process or violates board policies or school rules.
So that would be like a field trip or something that you'd have, that was, you're teaching students while you're on the bus or something like that, or is that?
My experience with field trips has mostly been with elementary students, so I guess I would have to defer to Mr. Shaw as to whether or not, we had been talking not specifically about field trips, but like when students are taking the bus to go to an athletic event, they could use their phone in a manner as long as it is not violating any board policies or breaking any rules, or disrupting the activity on the bus. So if they were using their phone to play music really loudly and the bus driver asked them to turn it down because it was disruptive on the bus, that could be against the rules or was creating chaos.
We've had some behavioral issues on elementary bus runs that have involved phones. So like trying to make sure that we're being very clear on what's okay and what's not okay.
I think this will become more clear, and some of the questions will be answered when we get to the regulations part of this.
Okay, so I'm sharing some results from the surveys that were given, and this survey is a student survey that was administered to the middle school and high school students. We had 404 respondents. And the results here show answers to the question, how much time do you spend on your phone or device during the day? So 67% of 404 students said less than 30 minutes. 22.3% said 30 minutes to 1 hour. A smaller number that doesn't have a percent said 1 to 2 hours, and then that smaller green pie was more than 2 hours. Here are some sample responses from the student surveys, and I quoted them because we were able to see their responses. The overall themes were that cell phones are not a problem, they help with socialization, and do not interfere with learning. That's from our middle and high school students that responded. So in case you can't quite see, one of the responses was, cell phone free is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Most parents brought their kids cell phones so they can contact families in an emergency. Not you, Levitt Area High School, can take them away. You guys are spending money on things that are not needed. You guys are worried about our mental health, but taking away our phones, you are not helping one bit. Get it together. Another one, lots of students don't misuse phones in school, and overall it is going to create more of a problem than now. The parent backlash will probably be more of a hassle than it is already. And let us use our phones if there is no instruction. It's up to us if we want to do our work. So those are some responses. There were some IDKs as well, but I chose not to put those in there. Next up, we surveyed staff, and this was pre-K to 12. 86 staff responded, and the question was, how often do your students use their smartphones or devices during school hours? So again, you can see less than 30 minutes is 51%, and then we go 30 minutes to an hour, 1 to 2 hours, and 11.6% said more than 2 hours. Now, keep in mind, this is pre-K to 12 that was responding to this. Here are some sample responses. The overall themes were, please enforce the policy's rules. Teachers want to teach and not have to police phone usage. Students are distracted by phones. Even if they are not out, the notifications cause a distraction. So staff, a few comments from staff were, I understand why parents want students in today's world to have a phone on them for safety reasons, but from what I've witnessed, it's a distraction from their academics, listening skills, and well-being. For some students, they're used in an inappropriate way too. Phones take away their abilities to hear and focus on the teachers and the lessons being taught to them. Another comment was, I would like it for students to not have their cell phones in the high school during the school day ever, from 7:40 until 2:05. I want to teach and not police cell phones that they hide in their pockets, sneak to use, and are distracted about thinking when the notifications. They can still tell they are getting them. Here are some additional staff comments. Students have already started talking about getting a second phone so they can store away the fake one and use the real one. Students are way too quick to disengage during lessons or stop at minimum requirements when a phone is present. Also, a student can't be attentive to me and be available to everyone else on a phone. Some parents tell the students, I pay you for the phone. When I contact you, you respond. Furthermore, students have built up a support network where they are constantly in crisis and feel obligated to help their friends calm down.
That's true.
And these are the parent surveys. The parents were also surveyed pre-K to 12, and 420 responded to this survey of, does your student have a cell phone during the school day? 57.9% said yes, 36% said no, and the remainder said sometimes. So I wanted to show you the grade levels of responses so you could see some, like we had 70 pre-K to 2 parents respond, 138 grades 3 through 6. We had 110 respond at the middle school and 142 at the high school.
I will say, of all the surveys we send in, that is by far the best response we've ever gotten. We tried the PBIS survey, the climate survey, we never get that number, so we hit a nerve.
It was quite high. So here is some sample responses. Again, the themes were students should not have phones. Phones are a distraction in school. I bought the phone for my child so I can be in touch during the day. You have no right to take away that phone that I pay for. My child needs to be able to contact me in an emergency. So these are some of the comments here. I'm all in with a cell phone free school. I'm greatly concerned about my child not having access to his phone in the event of an emergency. Allow them to have access because I like to stay in contact throughout the day if need be. I disagree on making it cell phone free as we've had too much violence in schools around the state and country, and when my children are older, I would like them to responsibly carry a phone so they can contact me in emergencies. And then we did get a letter from Eric Sampson with the Androscoggin Sheriff's Department, and here is an excerpt from that letter. I will read it because I realize some people may not be able to see it. From a law enforcement perspective, cyberbullying and emotional distress over unmitigated social media discourse can cause real health and safety problems. In addition, these issues can lead to an inability to focus and distraction on the school learning environment. According to the National School Safety and Security Services, cell phone use during a crisis can create less safe school emergency response.
The use of cell phones can accelerate the unintentional and even intentional spread of misinformation, rumors, and fear. This can adversely affect public safety, first responders, and students.
I wanted to share, and Principal Shaw, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point, but Eben really started and did lots of research in this area. And then Carrie, he shared it with me and Carrie. The research shows an increase in bullying and anxiety, decrease in mental health and well-being, and an increase in distraction. And the quote there that maybe Carrie will read for me will include this.
In all schools from elementary through high school, students should store their phones, smartwatches, and other personal devices that can send and receive texts in phone lockers, locked pouches during the school day. It's the only way to free their attention from each other and from their teachers. And that,
For their teachers.
yeah, and is that, I can't remember which author that one was.
He has written several books, the most recent
Oh,
being
is
The
that
Anxious
The Anxious Generation.
Generation.
Good stuff.
Evan, would you like to add anything while we're on the research?
No, I think you got it. I mean, the one thing I will say, and I've said this to the board before, there are very few things that you can look into, and everything points in the same direction. There isn't anything that says cell phones are great for kids. It just isn't, so. Leave it at that.
What about all the kids' comments?
That sounds about right.
And then lastly, I just wanted to give you really an overview on why we're bringing it here at this point without a recommendation from the policy committee. We met on March 27th and the committee wanted to bring JIC-J and JIC-JR to the full board for discussion. The administrators are recommending a vote to approve the new policy and regulations for implementation in the next school year. So if the policy is passed at this point of the year, it will not take effect until after Coral has graduated. It will take effect next year.
Okay.
That's what I have for a little
Conclusion.
mini.
Yes.
That brings
You were
conclusion
really
to.
excited at first. Do you want to go first, Peter?
Not overly excited, but I do have a concern.
Okay.
First and foremost, I'm 100% behind the policy and almost every bit of the enforcement. Actually, I can almost say all the enforcement with one caveat. The only caveat I have is I do not believe that any school administrator should open and view a student's personal device, phone, or however, without letting the parents know first. By getting permission to enter that phone, reading the phone, looking through the phone, they're having personal, they're receiving all the information the parents are giving to the student, back and forth, everything, all those personal conversations, everything is out in the open. I do believe that the parent or legal guardian should be informed before you go into that phone or talking about a phone. I have absolutely no problem with confiscating it if it's part of an investigation or for any reason, absolutely. Hold on to it, don't let them delete stuff, but before you open it, call the parents, because they have a right to know that you're about to read the conversations that they're having with their children. And even though I'm so in favor of this, this is one that I'll actually definitely stand against if we can't make some sort of change there.
Just before we move on, I just want to add, this is the first reading. So,
Yeah.
So.
And I'm not looking to make I'm not offering change, because
Yeah.
in past times, it's kind of gone, and administration, if they feel, have made a change or not. So I haven't added any sort of language at this point.
But you're hopeful next reading, there's some change.
That would be my hope, yes.
Okay.
I think Kyle is.
Oh, Kyle, go ahead.
How are the phones being, like the student comes in and they have their phone, they have to hand it into the front lobby or the office, or?
So, no, so we didn't, right now we're talking about both, right? The regulation as well.
Correct.
Right, so, yeah, do you want to just quickly highlight that? It's an honor system in your pocket, or is there how do
I
we?
mean, we had talked about yonder pouches, like those kinds of things. We've not secured any kind of funding for that. So I think the middle school already has a procedure for that. Evan, Jana, do you guys want to share?
When we initially started talking about this, the yonder pouches were part of the conversation. I'm not saying they're not part of the conversation now. We just haven't budgeted money to purchase them. I think there's some options around how we might handle it that are perhaps budget neutral. And I'll talk to the staff and the faculty in the building to figure out how we're gonna do that.
We currently have it in place at the middle school, so they're often put away. At 740, students are allowed to have them in their bags. If a student is caught using their phone, it goes to the main office and they can pick it up at the end of the day. If they're caught a second time, it goes to the main office and has to be picked up by an adult so that we can have a conversation about it. And that's been a pretty good deterrent.
I had, and that would be also study hall, students would be using it in study hall.
Here, they can't use it at all during the day. Study hall, lunch, class changes, or they're not supposed to. It's not lost on me that some make it into inconspicuous places on their body, but most of them comply. And if they ask, can I use my cell phone real quick to text my parent baseball practice was canceled, we'll either ask them to use the classroom phone or allow them with permission, and then it gets shut right back down.
Did I hear what you just said, though, not in the middle school, but the high school study hall use is gonna be okay? Is that what I just heard?
No.
No, okay. Yes, Peter?
Is my assumption basically the high school is gonna go to a similar policy as the middle school? Right now, would be my,
Ashley?
Yes, I had a couple questions or concerns. My first one along the lines with Peter with searching the cell phone, except I'm take it a little bit further. I don't think you could, I wouldn't be supportive of searching a cell phone without parental permission. If the parent says no, then you can't search the device. And it says, you know, reasonable suspicion that they broke policy. It's not, to me, that's not really how due process works, just because you think someone did something. And then you go search and say, well, I'm gonna prove you did it, versus having the evidence and saying, okay, I know you did it, but not, so I'm not supportive of that. And then clarification on using cameras or videos. I'm fully supportive of not photographing other students or people. But if a student, the bell rings, they're after school, and they want to take a picture of the art room or something on the wall, it's just, the way I read it, they're not allowed to do that. They have to go get permission to take a picture of something hanging in the hallway. And what's the reason?
Says photographing or taking video of any individual.
So it says, without, the use of camera or video function on any device without permission is strictly prohibited on school property or while engaged in school activity. So it doesn't just limit it to people. So that would bar a student from taking a picture of the hallway display.
Without permission.
Right, so what's the reason behind that?
And during school hours.
During school hours.
So the way I read it, it's not just school hours, it's while they're on school property.
I think you have to read the second paragraph, which says students are prohibited from using personal electronic devices and blah, 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 during the school day.
That's not what it says. It says on school property or while engaged in school activities. It's both.
We talked about this during the meeting because we had discussed like being able to take pictures when you're at a field hockey game or at Winter Carnival or anything like that. And the clarification that we got was that this was during school hours from 7:05 until, correct?
Yeah, I don't believe the intent was to restrict using the camera to take a picture of the heart of the wall after school hours.
So if we need
But
to,
if we need to clarify that.
I was gonna say, if we need to add that during the school day
Yeah, I
to
would
that
say,
as well.
that's how
then-
I'm reading it, unless anyone else is reading it differently.
So can you point out, I'm having a hard time finding that sentence.
So
Can
the
you point
use,
it out?
so, the larger paragraph there towards the bottom.
Okay.
The use of camera or camera video function on any device without permission is strictly prohibited on school property, including transportation, or while engaged in school activities. So I read that as it's strictly engaged while you're on the property at all, not just during school, the bell hours, which I agree they shouldn't be doing.
So I think as long as Eben was okay with it, clarifying the same sentence as in that second paragraph, which says during the school day.
I think I think like many other things, like I think the understanding of the intent, we're kind of getting there, and I think we can work on the wording. for
Well, that's
the
what I'm
second reading.
saying,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
giving, my big thing is giving policy committee an idea of what you want, so
Yeah.
when it comes back for the second reading, it's there and it's done.
I think I understand
Okay.
where, I've got the sentence, I think I understand what you're asking.
Yeah, just before we move on, I was actually hoping that, Evan, if you can, talk a little bit about the first part of what you said, which was the due process piece of searching phones. I know that there are somewhat different laws around teachers being able to, and I know this is something that's come up in other conversations, so I don't think the due process piece is necessarily applicable to teachers. We might want it to be, but I don't think it is by law. But the other part was, I was just curious, I mean, we must have cell phones that get confiscated now. What is our current, like, do we search kids' phones without permission right now? I mean, how does this work?
We're not typically digging into students' phones. They're typically locked, so if they're locked, a student is not typically going to be like, hey, here's my code. So, yeah, we're not diving into them on a regular basis, I can tell you that.
I think your point is correct, however, if we have a search policy already, and the rules are different in a school, which we've had this conversation before, the rules are different in a school versus law enforcement. So law enforcement will have to have, I think the language is more restrictive than reasonable.
Probable cause.
What's that?
You have to have probable cause.
Probable cause, and in a school, it's reasonable, like a reasonable suspicion. So the courts have been very clear in sort of laying that out, and so this just mirrors that same language. I agree with Eben, it's not likely that phones get searched because they're oftentimes locked, but this is the legal allowability of that, and does meet that. So and teachers can't do it, the policy allows administrators to do it, there needs to be a witness, like there's, that piece of it. So it's not just sort of like any staff member, I think the search policy is very clear around who can do that.
Peter?
But that doesn't mean we can't insist on it here.
No, I understand, I was asking.
And I have a real problem with anybody being able to look at a minor's conversations without letting the parent or guardian know. We've had this, so, and I would emphasize it again here, and eventually we might actually review the search policy, but anyways, it does not restrict, I'm not, because the whole point of that is the concern that something more vicious or violent or dangerous is going to happen in that period of time, and I don't see the ability to go look at somebody's text messages is going to be that issue. But anyways, that's not what I was actually going to, in regards to the cameras, I would suggest and want to emphasize to keep the restriction on make sure that it's understood that the bottom 2/3 of that paragraph is for any time, just not during class hours. Because if you put in the wording where the whole taking pictures of, and stuff like that, I can understand that you don't, but of individual people, that's any time on school property. You can't take a picture of somebody unless you get permission from them.
Yeah, same thing with locker rooms and bathrooms.
Well, yeah, that's just, no. I agree with the absolute no.
So starting at students.
Well, I
going
think the
down.
concern was.
I think the concern is the first statement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
statement I can understand, like, as Ashley was saying, hey, look what I did for
During
our
school.
work, after you're done, you take a picture, go home, show your mom or dad. But the bottom 2/3 of that, in regards to taking pictures of individuals, I do feel that, though, throws you up into a little bit of quandary when you start talking about athletic events, and I'll let somebody else hide in the details, because you're gonna be, I'm sure there's people taking pictures of the,
That's not even a thing, because that's a public event.
Yeah,
so that's a public event, even though it's on school grounds?
Correct.
It's not even a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Again, this is the first reading and acknowledgement. Anthony?
So I'll preface my comments with the fact that I do not have a cell phone, and I think that the modern world's obsessions with them is utterly toxic. However, like other technology, I think that it has pros and cons. This past February, The Guardian reported that banning smartphones at school does not itself improve academic grades or children's well-being, a study suggests. So I'm quoting from the article. Researchers from the University of Birmingham did find that spending longer on phones and social media in general was linked to lower grades, poor sleep, disruptive behavior, and lack of exercise, but these outcomes did not differ between schools that banned cell phones and those that did not. The study, published in the Lancet's Regional Health Europe Journal, also found that attempts to restrict phone use at school did not lower the overall time children spent on their devices throughout the day. So in short, banning cell phones at school cannot be relied on to improve either student performance or student well-being. I posit that the really effective changes that need to be made can only be made by parents. I think that instead of the government telling what can be done or what we are allowed to do, we should instead ask parents to opt out of having cell phones. This approach respects the parents' rights and keeps government from inappropriately seizing liberty from its citizens. With regard to the regulations, when this policy came before the committee originally, it prescribed students from accessing, sharing, downloading, producing obscene, vulgar, sexually explicit, sexually suggestive content. As I reminded the committee, such terminology was too difficult for some people to comprehend for a year ago, and it disappeared from the draft. And yet, this is the wording that is in policy IJNDB-R, as I believe is required by federal law. When we deliberated IJJ a year ago, I argued that our policies needed to be consistent both in wording and in philosophical foundation, and yet here we are again. I find it exceedingly ironic that an administration so concerned about a child's First Amendment rights with regard to accessing sexually explicit content has no compunctions whatsoever about placing limits on what children can photograph, record, and share. In contrast, I provided legal precedents that showed that the students' First Amendment rights are not absolute. So were I to support prescribing certain communications now, at least I would be not contradicting myself as our administration are. I cannot support a policy that is not consistent with IJNDB-R. I just cannot. The idea that we would have a policy that allows a student to access, share, or download sexually explicit content is alarming in the extreme. I also cannot support a policy that restricts students from taking pictures or making recordings without permission. Maine is a one-party state. You do not need someone's permission to take a photograph of them. Pictures and videos made by students have been instrumental nationwide in bringing to light a variety of failures in public schools, and I am aware of parents in our district who have instructed their children to make recordings to document problematic behaviors of both students and district employees. I support parental rights. I think parents ought to be able to opt into such things as surveys that asked about a student's health, family life, or sexuality. I think an opt-in policy with regard to cell phones is also appropriate. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Again, this is the first reading and acknowledgement of policy JICJ and JICJR. Any further discussion around this? Any more feedback we want to provide, direction before we leave tonight?
I would just echo what Peter had brought up about the parental, information kind of path, I guess, and would like to see wording that they're informed in some capacity if the phone is confiscated, or is needed further in an investigation, and maybe with some, caveat of safety concerns. If that's the case, then that maybe can be foregone. But I don't think the parent should be forgotten.
I just want to have a clarifying question about that point, and that is that it's not necessarily the confiscation of the phone that's the issue.
No.
It's the getting into the phone before or without notifying the parent.
Correct.
You can grab that phone, as far as I'm concerned, you can grab the phone, if it's on during the school day and not supposed to be there, you grab that phone as soon as you want. You're just not allowed to look at it till you talk to a parent. But I can understand keeping hold of it if you don't want them to delete something that they've deleted. I just don't want you to go reading through their emails, through their texts, or whatever you need to be looking at, to go through their photos until you get parental or guardian permission.
Okay.
Permission or notification?
Notification, well,
Okay.
notification kind of leads to permission, as long as you notify them.
But-
I understand,
But not
'cause-
necessarily, because the parent can refuse to allow you to go through it, and then if you had taken, I mean, because this has happened at schools
Yeah.
before, where somebody has taken an inappropriate picture of another student in a bathroom and then put it over Snapchat. But what if the parent says, no, you don't have permission, and then the student can still distribute that image over Snapchat?
My understanding is how it can work, is if you feel that there's something there, you can proceed down the chain, and then you can, I guess I follow how the legal aspect works, if it's to that point, if you feel that's happened, to me, that's almost a step towards authorities. If they're taking inappropriate, nude, or however pictures of other students during the class, which is one of the most extreme circumstances I can think with, but anyways, that falls into letting the authorities know, which I have no problem with as long as the parents are brought in onto the discussion. So again, that, as far as I'm concerned, and in the wording it can leave, the phone can be confiscated until you have the conversation with the parents. And if the parents say no, then that phone, then you can say, okay, well, we feel it has this to do, then we need to bring the authorities into place if you don't want me to look at it and prove that it isn't the case. And the authorities can decide if they can proceed down that route.
And so in that situation, they confiscate the phone until they get a warrant from the authorities?
In a sense, I guess that would work, as long as, my whole key to almost everything, as long as the parents or the guardian are brought into the discussion.
No, and
That's all I
I'm
really
just
care
saying,
about.
notification and permission are two very different things, so I think we need to clarify
Yeah, if they don't give
that.
you permission, that's a parental thing, because you have no rights over the parent. We as a school board have no rights over, within reason, we can say, get off our property, but that's even sometimes.
Correct, but
this is
my
the
right
whole
as a
point we
parent
have
of a child that was violated by a picture that shouldn't have been taken also
Absolutely,
matters.
exactly, and that's why, and hence I said that if we feel I'm sorry, we only have one high school principal, so if our high school principal feels that that's the case, and the parents and the child immediately say, no, you can't look at my phone, so he can't prove that it isn't the case, then that's a serious enough situation that he should, in our case, talk to our resource officer, might be the next step. I don't know how you'd go about that, officially, but a resource officer, or, if he can't prove immediately, they're not willing to let him prove that it's wrong, that, no, that was movement. I never took that picture. Okay. Well, I'm afraid that you have, and we have to worry about the other child's thing, so we need to talk to we have to go up the chain. And I'm holding on to the phone until we do.
I think we can work on some.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's always tough being absolute with anything,
Yeah.
but I think that, I think we understand the idea, and hopefully we can come back with,
Nuanced question, but how does it work, or maybe it doesn't matter if it's the parent's phone? Often cases, like with mine in high school, it's my mom, it's her phone, it's her name on it, she pays for it, just let me use it. It's not my phone.
I don't think it's any different than if you bring a car on campus, the car can be searched as well. Like, there's very clear legal precedent. Once you're on school property, the safety of the school and the other students takes precedent, and it can be searched. The bag that you bring to school probably was purchased by your parents as well. Like, if you play that out all the way, is probably very little that you've purchased yourself.
Any more
You'll find the school has,
by law? Yeah.
By law in the
by
Supreme Court.
precedent, but there's, on both sides, there's some.
Yeah,
I've
but-
seen them on both sides. I've seen court cases come on both sides.
Correct, so we're not gonna expand our powers beyond what we are legally allowed to do. We're not looking to do that, we're not interested in doing that. But I think we've had multiple conversations about school safety and what administrators need to be able to do to respond to situations that are dangerous, and that we need to be able to take action because all the other students are at the mercy of an incident that we may or may not be able to resolve. So I think that's always that balance of like the individual's rights versus the right of keeping the school safe, and that's that balance.
The only thing I think may be unique on this particular debate is the coded encryption of the devices and how realistic it is that we're actually gonna be able to search them anyway if we wanted to. So I don't know, it feels like we may be arguing with something that's not really functionally possible anyway, but I don't know. Yeah.
We'll work on something.
Any more thoughts on this before we move to acknowledge this first reading? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? We got an abstention from Kyle and opposed from Mr. Shostak, right? Everyone else was in favor? Wanna make sure? Okay. All right, we'll move on here. Hopefully the owl is not picking up all the grumbling noises coming from my stomach. I'm sure the people sitting next to me have heard at this point. But,
Is there something on the graduation policy? No presentation.
all right. So,
I don't mean I
You were on
hope
a
not.
roll,
I mean,
you were on a roll, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know if I was like gonna put,
No, I
get
think
another
you're
one
good.
going, okay.
next is going to be a consideration of policy committee recommendation, first reading and acknowledgement of revised policy IKF, which is graduation requirements. Would someone like to make that motion? Bree, seconded by Peter. He said it right in my ear, though. I got him. Is presentation or no presentation on this one? Anyone?
no
want to?
presentation, but Mr. Shaw and I will answer any questions to the best of my ability, and he'll do a much better job, I'm sure.
Go ahead, Peter.
From what I can tell, there's really not a lot of changes, other than we've added a whole lot of description unless it was somewhere else. Is that we're just kind of filling in the cracks of stuff we've been doing over the years, or?
What do you want to answer? He's looking at me, I can try to answer.
Well, she said that you would answer it
Do you
better,
want to
so.
start? I might know the
Try.
answer.
Let me try. Jamie was really antsy over there.
Jamie put her hand up.
Well,
so
I
maybe
think
Jamie's
Jamie
actually
knows.
wants to answer.
Well, I wanted to say something before we started, so that people understand
Yeah.
where we're going, because this is not gonna affect me, since this is my last meeting. However, after you guys vote on this, you are going to, once you approve this, you're going to be deleting other policies. And those
Okay.
policies were brought into this one,
Yeah.
just to make it more understandable. So instead of having 4 different policies for graduation requirements, we just merged them all into one policy. So that's the additions
You
that
did a
you see.
very good job.
And in addition to that, we.
And now Evan and Teresa can take over.
Well, we
You have
know,
nothing to say, I don't-
we no longer have a special, a separate
Graduation
policy.
policy for special education.
You
I
read
saw
my
you,
mind, I'm
I
like-
saw you get stuck. I was like, I can help you.
Okay, so we no longer have that. That was one of the goals or pieces that were part of our audit, that whenever policies could be inclusive, that we would make them so. Okay, Evan, over to you, seeing how I'm losing the ability to speak.
You guys got it.
There's also a policy about the graduation ceremony. That's now brought into this. Like anything that has to do with graduation is now in this policy. So
So it's
that,
permanently at the high school?
No.
that's not by policy.
And then you'll see on the first page, the table
Yes.
that was deleted and then revised to be a different table. And that's just because the requirements for 2016, 17, 18, 19, and beyond. Clearly, we're way past that, so it was time for an update. And I, you know, Anthony and Crystal and I all looked at it and we were like overwhelmed by all of it. And it just seemed like, as a parent, if I'm reading it, I wanted to know what my kid needed to take, and it was cleaned up nicely. And I think much more parent and student friendly to read and understand.
Was this unanimous from policy?
Yes.
It was?
Yep.
No.
No.
I was gonna say, because if it was, it would have been on the consent agenda.
No,
Well,
it was not.
Well, we had decided to pull the other one from even, because the other one was unanimous, cell phones.
Yep.
It
So-
was unanimous to bring forward. This was unanimous to bring forward because it was not a unanimous vote at policy. I was thinking that it was, but
Okay.
it's
Yeah, I
2
was
to 1.
thinking it was two. Yeah, 2 to 1.
Okay. Other discussion, Anthony? Yeah.
So I was the dissenting vote. Under Article 5, we have A and B with transfer students and homeschooled students. I want to just disclose, I think everybody here knows that we homeschooled our children. They also partake in some of the offerings in the school district, but I do not attempt to have my kids graduate from Leavitt. So this has nothing to do with me personally or my kids. However, I think that it is odd to separate homeschool students from other transfer students. Homeschool is school, it's simply school at home. They are homeschooled, so they would be transferring in from another school. Mr. Shaw did offer his explanation as to why they are different, but I did not find it convincing. It seems to me that everything discussed in A, transfer students, could be applied to homeschool students. I don't think that it would be necessary to have different amounts of time for homeschool students, more amount of time for homeschool students to qualify for a Leavitt diploma as for a kid that transferred in from Lewiston or from some school in Alabama, or potentially some other country. So I just tossed that out there.
Yes, Ashley?
Yeah, I had the same thought on, when I was reading through it, that as well. Just knowing, you know, I know families that homeschool that go through a pretty rigorous year-end review process. They have to have a certified teacher review all the work that they do, and in some cases, their kids actually take standardized testing that place them in grade levels, and then it goes to the superintendent, right? Or
Goes
they,
to the Department.
the Department of Education. So I feel like, you know, it's being reviewed to ensure that those kids are staying at grade level or that their education is sufficient. So why wouldn't someone at the high school, the principal or guidance counselor, whoever, be able to review that and determine the value of it in the same way they would another transfer student?
I think both Evan and I would be able, as a former high school principal, there is zero commonality between one homeschool family and another homeschool family. There are no regulations around it. So one family may bring in a pile of documentation that's very clear. Another family may bring you an email that says, my kid took these 5 classes. Like, it literally is every family just bringing in whatever they've done. There's no consistency, there's no regulations around it. So it's not a dismissal of what some families are doing. I've also known some incredible homeschooled kids in my career who accessed, you know, things at Poland Regional High School, and I'm sure the same is here. But there's no apples to apples. Each family is doing their own thing, and in some cases, the documentation is really not there.
So I guess that was my question is, wouldn't at that point you be able to determine based from family to family the value of their education versus putting like term limits on how long you have to be here? If someone brings in an email that says, my kid did Algebra 1, I mean, versus a family whose kid enrolled who has, you know, a certified review portfolio, which some families do, then that would obviously, you would review that as a higher value and be able to substantiate that.
Come back to you a second. Anthony, go ahead.
Back to Anthony's original point about the difference between a transfer student and the homeschool student. The way that I'm reading what we have here right now is that this is a transfer student from another state or an educational program that is not required to be aligned with the content standards of the system of learning results. I would like to add in there, have the committee add in, I believe we really are talking about the main learning results specifically. And so in that case, I do think that there's difference because this really is talking about a student who's coming from most likely another state. I'm not sure what other educational program would like fall under the system, like that would be in the state of Maine that would not be doing the learning
Private
results,
school.
but.
Kids coming from
Oh,
private
sorry,
school.
okay. But this one here does not have any, I guess Anthony's, I would like clarification because it doesn't say that they have to have attended Levitt for any specific amount of time because for the most part, they do have their records coming from another school to be able to transfer unless it's not part of the, they need to kind of check on those main learning results to make sure that they have enough to determine the value of the student's prior educational experience because again, if they come from another state, their standards would be very different and they need to look at those a little more closely. My only concern about the homeschooling part would be the value of putting the number of 2 years and then they had to be there for the entire senior year, which would then obviously really equate to the 12 credits. And I'm wondering why that couldn't just be, why couldn't a student get a Levitt diploma with 1 year? I'm just asking questions. I don't have
It's
a
in the
preference.
current
I just-
policy. That's not
Okay.
new, that's not new language, right? Yeah, it's in the
But-
current policy now.
If it were to change to 1 year, does that devalue the significance of the diploma?
I'm not gonna say it devalues it. I'm gonna go back to what I said when I was answering your question, Ashley. The reality is, there is no consistency. So I think the intent is to make sure that the Levitt High School diploma has a certain value to it, and I don't mean like one's better than the other, but like what we're signing off that kids know and can do. And without a certain amount of time there, a family that has homeschooled or a student that's been homeschooled, because that documentation is not, there's no certain documentation that's required, there's no rules, like anybody can bring any kind of documentation they want. We have no way of knowing that what that student, we can't say that that student has earned that diploma and knows certain things and can do certain things. We can't. We don't, it's just not possible with the way the regulations work around homeschooling and the variety that we see.
Anthony?
So just so that everybody's clear, students transferring, not homeschool students transferring in, have to have the principal determine the value of their prior educational experience, right, toward meeting the graduation requirements. Under homeschool students, it states that the high school principal shall determine the value of the student's prior educational experience toward meeting the graduation credit for school requirements. That's the same activity. That's the principal doing the exact same thing for a kid transferring in from a private school or some other state's public school or a Maine homeschool student, right? So if that determination is being made, then that determination is being made. You have met this much of the graduation requirements. So to then establish a 2-year minimum that does not apply to other students just seems completely arbitrary. It's like a penalty on homeschool students that no other student has to, they don't have to jump over that hoop, right? That only exists for homeschool students, and I think that is completely unfair. If we're gonna say, you gotta be here for 2 years to say that you graduated from Levitt, great, apply that to all transfer students. I'm not advocating for that, but at least that would be consistent.
So let me just flesh that out a little bit. So as student coming from another school, we have an institution to call. So if we don't understand the name of a class. We can call that institution, they can provide us with a syllabus, we can get more information about what the student did. With a homeschool parent, we would just be, again, contacting the parent. It would be the same source of information. So there's no way for us to verify the content of what they've done, so that's really the difference.
So they're getting 0 credit?
No, not necessarily.
Well, because, no, let's
Okay.
actually think about this. If you're saying that the principal cannot evaluate that because, or at least potentially cannot evaluate it because there's no standard material. So, if that's the case, he could invalidate everything that the entire student's homeschool performance and say, no, we're not, you have meant nothing toward these requirements. So to state then that you have to be here for 2 years is still completely arbitrary. What's magical about 2 years? Nothing.
Did you have your hand up? Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, and Evan, correct me if I'm wrong. In response to your question, Bree, about the 1 year thing and 1 year being 12 credits,
No, it's not 12 credits, but
Oh, okay, that was what I was saying,
No.
is that it
I
would
know
have to be
that's-
one or the other, because you can't get
you
12
can't,
credits in
exactly,
1 year.
right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bree.
I am gonna push back though some more because I wanna throw out a scenario where sometimes students do go to homeschooling for various reasons. And so, for example, the wording here, one of which is their entire senior year. I've had students who say, I can't go to the school anymore because I'm being bullied. And I'm going to step out and I'm gonna go homeschool. And then for whatever reason, because of the lack of support at home, trying to do the homeschooling on their own, they decide, okay, I'll go back to school. Oh no, they made those decisions in their senior year to say, I'm not gonna go back to that school, I'm gonna homeschool for my last year of school. And then they took off a couple months, and now they wanna try to go back, and now they're not gonna get a diploma because they weren't there for their entire senior year. So I'm gonna push back on, again, I agree with Anthony, like, I think that homeschool and transfer students can have 2 separate places, but I do think that putting these absolutes of 2 years, 1 full year, 12 credits, is going to put a line across certain people to be able to say, oh, I guess you can't get the Levitt diploma because you decided to homeschool and you missed half your senior year when you decided you could come back. But you left because you were being bullied, and those things have happened. I've had students come and go as a teacher because they were being bullied and their parents wanted to pull them out for a year, half a year, middle school, let's try again when you're in high school, etc. Like whatever the case may be, whatever the year is. And if this were to happen to a student in their senior year and that wording is in there, they have to attend Levitt their entire senior year. Again, it's an absolute that it's gonna put a wall. So I'd like to see that second half that Anthony is referring to, about the 2 years and the entire senior year come out.
I have a question about the difference between a Levitt Area High School diploma and like an equivalency diploma that you would get at Built Ed, right? I mean, I'm gonna date myself again by, well, I won't even say it. But there are alternative ways to get your high school diploma than just getting the Levitt Area High School diploma.
Correct.
That are maybe non-traditional, and I think what we're talking about are students that were perhaps educated in a non-traditional way, in a way that might not have been the way the Levitt Area High School did it, or like you just said, someone that takes months off in their senior year, maybe they should be having some sort of alternative type of diploma.
You can't.
I don't know. I guess what I'm
You
saying.
can't say that.
Say what?
That you're literally, like what Anthony is saying, you're literally like putting a target on a homeschooler's back just because, oh, maybe they need an alternative education because that's what they've chosen already. You don't know the family situation. Maybe that through elementary, the parent felt like they could homeschool the kid, but by the time they're getting into high school, that's now a little bit beyond their purview to be able to say, I can't teach you chemistry, I could teach you all the other stuff about science up till, but now you're kind of getting beyond, and I want you to go to Levitt, because that's the town we live in, so they should be allowed to go back to the public school. We shouldn't say, well, once you're homeschooled, you're always kind of weird,
No.
and now you need
That's not what I'm
alternative.
saying.
Definitely not
That's
what I
what
was
Joe was
saying.
saying, that
That's definitely not what I was saying.
you're saying alternative education, once they
No,
did
no, no, no.
alternative
An
education, they should
alternative
always
route
have
to a
alternative.
diploma.
But that should be left up to, like, we live in this town and they pay the taxes here, and if they wanna send their kid to the public school, they should be allowed to send their kid to the public school.
No
And
one's
shouldn't have to
denying that.
jump through a ton of hoops to get into that. And I just think some of this absolute language could be changed without it being like they are being segregated. And I will also put it out there that I have also homeschooled. And I'll put out there, as Ashley mentioned, I've been that teacher who reviews homeschool materials. And it is still rigorous. So I really don't want us to look at this and think that the work that families do, because, yes, Carrie, it is different, because they can take tests to show their proficiency, or they can put together a whole year's worth of work and have it reviewed by a certified teacher who's still currently working in the, in education. It's still a lot of work they have to do. I think sometimes we might even ask more of them, because they always have to prove themselves. They always have to prove that they're not just sitting around watching TV all day long at home and calling it homeschool. Like, they still have to prove they're actually doing these things. And I just feel like this is making undue hardship for them to have to jump through even more hoops and targets on their back of a stigma around homeschool, and I think we need to be more inclusive.
Peter.
Two parts. First part, is this current or changed? This is our current policy that we're looking at. It just got moved, so this isn't a change.
Correct.
All right. Second part, I don't necessarily disagree with these two folks here. Not on everything, but I do feel that some of the restrictions, specifically on the homeschool, I do have a little bit of concern on. My son was not homeschooled. There was no way I could even come close to doing that. So that, you know, I have no dog in the fight here right now. But I do feel, I do have some concern, especially with that particular student who does leave for a month or two. And I know that our district has dealt with that. And I do not necessarily want to feel that once they do have to leave for a month and come back during that senior year, you know, how have we done, you know, do they want to finish off their senior year? Do they want to march, get the Levitt diploma? But they did leave because they went over to, you know, not for much longer, but they went to St. Dom's for a short period. Or they went to, you know, I happen to know one particular, they went to Hebron Academy just for a short period to get away from bullying, and then came back. Actually, it doesn't matter. But I'm concerned, so they would not be allowed to get a diploma if that was the case. They'd have to get an alternative, a diploma from the
You're
adult
describing transfer students.
Well, according to the wording, they have to be a student
That's the
of the
homeschool.
district. But no, we're talking, okay, homeschool, but
Yeah.
let's talk about a homeschool kid that got transferred. I have to agree with what she said. I was concerned when she said if they were brought home for a month or so to deal with a particular bullying issue, then they were allowed back in after that issue was remedied somehow, some fashion. During their senior year, they're not allowed to get a Levitt diploma. That part concerns me, in particular. So, you know, that's,
Can we let Evan address that?
yeah, I'm curious, you know, that, if he wishes to at this point, I don't really.
I can try, like, we're talking about several different situations at the same time, so it's hard to parse out which one we're particularly talking about. But I cannot think of a situation in which a student would withdraw themselves during their senior year to be homeschooled for a few weeks and then come back. It's too much of a pain. Like, that, I just can't, I can't see a situation in which that would happen. If a student was having a situation that we were having to work through, then they wouldn't unenroll, we'd work through it and get them back. So that I don't think is something that is an obstacle in any way. In regard to the language around the entire senior year, part of that is around shopping around for the school you wanna graduate from. And I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but that's real. Like, people shop around to the school that they wanna get their diploma from during their senior year. And the attempt is to make it pretty clear, and I think most high schools do this, an attempt to make it clear that if you want a diploma with our name on it, you're gonna be here for your senior year. It's not a dig at the classes that they've been taking or the coursework that they've done. It's a matter of what was happening in the past, and it's been a while, but what happened in the past is students, whether they were homeschooled or not, would wait till the second quarter of their senior year to find out where they might land in the graduating class, and then go to the one they're gonna be the highest in. And I'm not making it up, that's real. But it hasn't happened for a while. It kind of slowed down and stopped when the top two that were getting the scholarships to UMaine. When that went away, a lot of that went away. So that's where some of this language comes from initially.
I'm not sure who had their hand up first between the two of you.
Go ahead, Bree.
So with that said, though, that's not language under the transfer student, so to say, which I agree with, like, that does happen. Students do try to transfer schools because they want to have a better standing in the class, but that's not worded there under the transfer students. So again, this is only the wording under the homeschool students, and homeschool students I don't think are necessarily in that same category, in the same boat. And I think it would just either need to be said in both places or just removed entirely from the homeschooling one, because right now it's inequitable.
Yeah.
Bree basically brought up the point that the class standing is under item F. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue.
All right, Peter.
Wouldn't this policy just be based around students within district? So they're taxpayers living in the district. We all know about the ones who put Grammy's house down or Uncle Bob's house down as their prime, which you never identify. But in general, this is about students that in district, live in district.
It's supposed to be.
So, you know, so I just, part of me says if you live in district or, I don't know.
But is there any requirement that that's the case, though?
Well, to be part of our school, yeah.
Yeah, they can't enroll if they're
Yeah.
not
Okay, so it would be
resident.
homeschool.
You have to get
Resident,
a-
or you have to be a resident or a superintendent's agreement,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
otherwise you
So-
can't enroll.
So
it's
just
not
trying to
even-
think about the
this
whole
wouldn't even
shopping
apply to you if you
aspect or
weren't
so
those two
forth.
things.
Well, that's when they start to use the relatives.
Yeah, Uncle Joe.
Or get a superintendent agreement.
All right, just to take us back to where we're at here. This is a first reading and acknowledgement of this policy. So far, we've had pretty robust discussion, but no necessarily actual official amendments have been put forward, but certainly a lot of discussion. Do you want to speak again?
Well, I mean, on first readings, how official do you want the First Amendments versus just, can you take our feedback back to?
Remember, you gotta look a different direction now. You can look at her all you want, but.
No, but I mean, she can advise, right?
Yeah.
Do you want it to be official, or do you want it to just say, you've heard what we've said?
I've heard,
Please take it back.
I was gonna say, on
This is
the,
just the first read,
that's what we did in the first one.
and I feel like everyone's taken notes, we don't need to add amendments, and then
Sure.
we can change it if they don't,
Okay.
if we don't see it the way we like it the next time.
Maybe have discussion again.
All right.
Maybe.
Are we ready to take action here and acknowledge this first reading?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor? That is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's so opposed. Okay, 2 opposed. Got it. So we've acknowledged the first reading, and we move on. I know we said we would insert item 9.1 just before 11.4, but I think it actually makes more sense to do it right now, so I'm gonna make an executive decision to do that. And we'll go to item 9.1, that was pulled from the consent agenda, which was review and adoption of superintendent recommended job description. 9.1.1, van driver revised, and 9.1.2, bus aide new. Would someone like to make that, oh no, it's, well, I guess someone still needs to make that motion.
So,
Peter, seconded by Bree, and we'll have discussion. Anthony?
So why does a board review job descriptions? One would think that it is to make sure that there are no errors, especially ones that might result in misunderstandings. If we simply approve things that come before us, we reduce our office to a meaningless charade of providing rubber stamps rather than oversight. In his dystopian novel 1984, George Orwell discussed the concept of newspeak, which can succinctly be described as the use of words to mean their opposite. Newspeak made it possible for the entire population of Oceania to agree that 2 + 2 = 5, despite the fact that everyone knew that the statement is false. The psychological phenomenon that allows this to happen was the subject of the Asch conformity experiment of the 1950s. This oft-repeated controlled experiment showed that many people are willing to say something they know is not true in order to conform with the majority. But not everyone is willing to do so. The experiments consistently show that there are those who do not submit to the social influence. I am one of those people. I will not agree that 2 + 2 = 5, at least not until the extreme coercive measures at the disposal of Orwell's Ministry of Truth are brought to bear. And I will not agree that at least can mean a range. Words have meanings. When we pretend otherwise, we make meaningful communication impossible and pave the way for exactly the kind of newspeak that is central to Maine's violation of Title IX. And so I will be voting against approving this job description, and will do so in every instance in which at least is used to represent anything other than what those words actually mean, and I encourage you all to do the same.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I was wondering if at the bottom,
Which one?
the number 6,
Which job description?
oh, I'm sorry, van driver, the first one.
Okay.
9.1.1. So it says, keep the assigned van clean, keep the assigned schedule, and makes no change.
Yes.
So should it be keep and make?
Yes.
Okay, and then, I might just be reading this wrong, but the sentence that says, under qualifications, student discipline in according with district policies, does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
I don't know what you're looking at, Jeannie.
Under qualifications of van driver, it's the,
Okay.
see where it says have ability to complete training?
Yep.
And then it says student discipline in according with district policies?
Oh. Okay. I mean, I can edit it and bring it back at the next meeting.
I mean, I don't know if we need to edit, bring it back, but.
Second sentence down, there's 2 R's in reading.
Ooh, let's pull this one. And we'll re-edit it.
All right. There's been well, I don't know, can we just pull it? I think the person that made the motion needs to pull the motion, right? Who made this motion? Seconded it.
I did. You seconded it?
I don't know, I did so.
Peter made the motion, Bree seconded it.
Okay.
Take my credit. No, I
If
refuse
the
to pull it.
administration would like to pull this, would you
Nope.
be willing to?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Of course not, of course I'll pull it.
Okay, all right. So
Just tag it.
it is being.
Did I get a glare?
The motion is now off the table. So let's move on to what was item 11.3, which is discussion and feedback on fiscal year 26.
Hold on a
do you wanna
second,
vote on
hold on. We made a motion for both.
Yeah.
9 point, so are we
Yeah,
pulling
yeah.
them all?
We have-
I can bring them both back.
Yeah, that's what I
Like,
thought we
I'll
just
look at both
did.
of them and I'll bring them both back,
Okay,
okay?
Okay,
yeah.
just want to make sure we just weren't, okay,
Yeah,
works for me.
I think the bus aid one is new, so I suspect that one is fine.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, some of those
It's
errors
not
in
fine.
I hear what you're saying. The van driver one,
Grammarly.
those are errors that
Yes.
were there prior to,
Yep.
so there's generations of problems on that one, so we'll fix it.
All right. So, item 11.3, discussion and feedback on the fiscal year 26 budget development process. This is not really a motion, so what do we,
We can
what was the
also-
intent of this?
Well, we did this last
We
year,
did,
and we
yeah.
made some changes, so
Okay,
I think the
that's
intent
true.
is to like, we've done it a different way. If we would like to wait a meeting, we can also do that, but we made a change this year, so it is helpful to know
Yeah.
whether or not people think that was okay.
We also have 6 minutes in 2 executive sessions.
10-4, yeah.
I'd like to extend the meeting.
Yeah.
You have
Well, I
7
was gonna say,
minutes.
we have
Jamie is never gonna get off of the
I was
school
wondering
board.
when my like school board email
6
shuts
minutes,
off,
yeah.
because if it's at midnight, we
No,
gotta.
it will not be at midnight.
I make a
Um,
motion that we postpone, is that the right one, postpone or delay, what's the word I want to use?
Yeah, I would say,
This discussion,
I would just, yeah, I almost feel like this might be a table, but,
table postpone, whatever is the correct word. you
Table
want me to
means
use.
somebody has to vote
we
to
have to
put
bring
it
it
back.
back. Yeah,
Postpone
But
just
somebody has to
means
vote to put it back, versus postponing is
Okay.
just putting it off.
Put it on
Sure.
to the next agenda.
sure.
People's
I'll
brains.
That's why I
Second
said,
that.
whatever is the correct word there, please. I knew that
I'm
was
second.
Whatever you guys who make the agenda want to do.
I no longer have an opinion.
Postpone,
Yeah,
postpone to the next meeting, that's
Just kicking
appropriate.
the can down.
Just clearly, we don't want to do it.
You know, the joke's really on you guys, because I just got back from the West Coast, so it's only like 7 o'clock for me. So
Just like, let's
keep
go.
going.
all right. I mean, we never made a motion to put this on, so we don't even need to do anything. We'll just strike it and we will come back to it later.
I make a motion for the executive session.
I don't
Hold
think
on.
you can do it now.
Hold on, before
Let's
that,
go.
I think Kyle was about to make another motion I think is more important to do first, which was, you wanted to
Extend the
move to
meeting.
extend past 10 o'clock, right?
Yes, I'd like to extend it past 10 o'clock.
Seconded by
I
Peter.
already forgot.
All those in favor of extending? That is oh, yes, I'm sorry, I almost
Oh,
missed
it's
your hand.
up.
It's up.
That's an unwilling agreement
Okay.
over there.
So it's unanimous.
defiant this
All right.
guys.
Now we need a motion to go into
Very
executive
sad
session.
about
Sorry,
forestry.
Jamie, what did you want to?
Can I make a motion to go into executive session?
Yes, you can.
Second.
But before, but I want to make sure it's the right one. We actually have to say the actual words. So I'll entertain a motion to request for an executive session to discuss superintendent of schools
So moved.
contract pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A. Moved by Jamie, seconded by Crystal. All those, yes,
Wait, Crystal?
That's the
Crystal.
first positive thing I've.
All those in favor?
No.
Okay, thank you
Well, I
very
don't know,
much.
how was your day? You good?
No,